call this Superintendent Workshop to order. It's Friday, October 25th, 2019, and we are in the Joe N. Idolat Teacher Education Center located at 6500 57th Street, and we are televising this, and we invite the public to always come and attend our meetings in person. At this time, I am going to turn the meeting over to Dr. Moxley, and she can introduce the purpose of the workshop.
Good morning, board members. Thank you for being here this morning, and happy Friday to you. I want to call your attention to the agenda that we have today. Originally, this workshop was set up to review and revise the strategic plan. We obviously will not complete that task in whatever time we have, and I will talk to you a little bit about that as we go through that this topic. I'm having a hard time talking on Friday. It is not Saturday yet. It is still Friday. So. But you'll see item B says placeholder. If you'll recall, Tuesday night at the board meeting, we did agree to place the second item would be the discussion of the topic that Mrs. Barrenbohr brought up about the framing question for the, I don't know whether it was a visioning framing question about the superintendent, and it was a philosophical framing question, I guess, is how I would describe it. So I do think we need to make sure, Mrs. Esplin, that the agenda reflects that item B is that topic from the board meeting on Tuesday night that was a discussion item, because we'll be covering that today as well. So that will be the overview of our workshop this morning. We're here. So board members, we're going to go ahead and jump right into the strategic planning process. You have a notebook in front of you, and before we get started, let me walk you through what is in your notebook, because you'll probably want to flip back and forth. And we did put online in board docs many of these items. In fact, I didn't copy everything of every other school district strategic plan. We did cut and paste some samples for you, but they are online. So with your computers, if you want to go back in and pull up the full one. So tab 1, you have a copy of our strategic plan. Okay, that's just the current one for reference. Tab 2, you have some pages in there. The guiding principles that I brought as superintendent for reference, and then pages 2, 3, all the way through 7, you have samples of values or belief statements. No, I just pulled them from different strategic plans from other school boards, which you have referenced. A lot of times you talk about Pinellas, you talk about Osceola, you talk about Hillsborough, OCPS has some, and then I just pulled some, I had some samples from Knox County in Tennessee and different places. So I pulled those, and we'll look at those. Tab 3, I took, and there are 4 pages in tab 3. The first 2 pages is the combined information that board members, if you chose to, sent to us. So I tried to categorize them. So you'll see as we go down through here, if it really was a logistic, structural, or something you wanted to see as a requirement, I put it in that section, and I did put initials after it, so you knew who sent that. Then I took things and broke it down into the buckets or the circles in categories, so you'll see those. And then at the end, you'll see the web addresses for the full plans for Pinellas, Osceola, and Hillsborough there. In the last 2 pages in that section, pages 3 and 4, that's what I lifted from your email. It is exact as the board member sent it, and it's just there, and it's just the pure list. It's not categorized. Tab number 4 is some of the work that the team that you have, Mrs. Dampierre, Dr. McMahon, and Mr. Taylor, that they have worked. We were brainstorming, and we had some ideas, and we wanted to kind of walk you through that. I do have a page from Knox County schools that we tended to like their structure because it was very user-friendly, and we were looking at it from the eyes of the public, a parent, a community member, a retiree, our retired educators, that type of thing. And then tab 5, you have Pinellas County's full strategic plan. I didn't print it in color, but you have it there. That's one example. I do have Knox County's full strategic plan. I didn't copy it because it's, 40 pages. I did not copy Osceola's for you because it's very much green, and when you copy it, you can't read it. So we can reference by clicking, but I can play around with it. We just kind of lost time on that. So that's what's in your notebooks there for reference. So what I would like to do is to start in tab 2 and have you look at our current strategic plan. So if you look at our current, and you can take that out, it's tab 1 is our current strategic plan. But we have a vision and a mission statement, and I'd like you to start there. So if you look at page 3 of our current strategic plan, you will see our vision and our mission. And today, I don't want to get hung up on what our brochure is going to look like. Let's look at the meat. And so my thinking is, let's start with our vision and mission, then talk about belief statements. If that's all the further we get today, that's a good accomplishment. Then we kind of had some thinking. I'd like to introduce kind of what our thinking is. If you don't like it, then that's great. We'll go a different direction. We didn't want to do any more work on it if it was an avenue you didn't want. So we're going to really talk about vision, mission, beliefs, and then get into, what do we want those big categories to look like? That's where I'd like to get to today, and maybe what our key performance indicators are. And then I'll tell you kind of my thinking of some structure, but that's a lot to cover here this morning. So let's start with vision. The vision statement is to educate and inspire every student to be successful. And then the mission statement is to serve all students with excellence. And, that can continue, but as a new board and as a new collective board, if you wanted to do any editing or do any further research or review of that, now would be the time to think about that. So it may be, if you want to keep those and not revise them, then we'll move forward. If you want to do some revision on it, if you talk to us what you'd like to see, then we won't spend our time together doing all the wordsmithing. We'll take it back, we'll kind of put it in some draft language and bring it back to you. So let's start with the vision and mission statement, if that's anything you want to look at for revisions.
Go ahead.
I'd like to add something in there about lifelong learners,
Okay.
not just to be successful, but to be, maybe educate and inspire every student to be successful lifelong learners, or
Okay.
something along those lines.
All right.
Go ahead.
Interesting point, and I have no idea how to word this. But something that succinctly characterizes kind of like successful in whatever path they choose. Like whatever success represents to them. And I don't know how to say that right now.
Okay.
Because I think, I agree with you about lifelong learners, but I think it's not just about learning, it's actually about choosing a path and being excellent and successful within it, whatever that is. And I
So
don't know how to say that.
One of the expressions that I've heard used before that I always felt was really important was unfolding the full potential of every child, because it takes on a number of
I
different.
like that.
So, whatever that potential may be, helping them to discover what their true path is.
Maybe that could be a good mission to the vision, because that's an actual action. That sounds like that would be, how do we get our children to the vision? So whereas our current mission is to serve all students with excellence, what Mrs. Justice, can you reword that, Mrs. Justice?
Unfolding the full potential.
You could just add it on, to serve all students with excellence.
For the
By
purpose of
by
unfolding.
unfolding the
Yeah.
potential of every child. I mean, that's one way of doing it.
I agree that somewhere, like however we wordsmith it, which
Right.
we don't, we won't get caught in now,
Well,
but
I
something
think
like
right
that.
now what we're doing is we're just throwing out some
talking.
ideas, and then we'll look at how we can incorporate those.
I think what
So-
it says is that we're willing to innovate. And I know that Mrs. Dampier and I have discussed that before. You know, not every student's education is going to look and feel the same way, and we're okay with that.
You know, I think that's a, sorry.
Mrs. Barrenborg?
Thank you. Just because I looked it up, the difference between a mission and a vision statement, and I know vision statements, you want really succinct statements so that people can think about them and remember them, not just let's put this on paper and forget about it. So a mission statement describes what a company wants to do now, or in our case, the school district wants to do now. A vision statement says what do we want to be in the future. So if we can keep that in mind, I think I like the futuristic idea for the vision. But you want it succinct, and you want everybody to know it. So when you walk around, I remember when we were training, we used to have to ask our teachers, what's our vision, what's our mission? And so we needed to know that. I don't think you have to memorize that, but I think it's a good thing to everybody be on the same page with the same statements. So if you can make them succinct and something that we all believe in, I think that's the best thing.
Can I add to that? What I like about surfacing the vision statement is that the vision is a state that exists in the future. It's not something towards which we are going, because then we are always in the state of going there. We are never, the vision is the thing we look towards having achieved at some
That's
point
exactly
in the
what I
future.
said. It says
Right.
what we
So-
want to be in the future.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So educate and inspire is like acting now. What I hear and what you're saying is, it's not to educate and inspire, it's that every student, again, I don't know how to word this, but, you know, every student has been educated and inspired to be successful. The end state is we have achieved this, not we are continually working towards it.
Right.
Does that?
Yeah, can Mrs. Justice go back to what she said before? Maybe we can take that word and put it into that kind of text.
I said to unfold the full potential of every child, but I think you can put together create lifelong learners by unfolding the full potential of every child.
Yeah, I like that.
And that would be the mission statement?
The mission would be to create lifelong learners by unfolding the full potential of every student, child, I don't know, I mean,
Right.
And the
something like
vision
that.
is, what is that going to look like in the future?
Can
What are
can
those
you
ones?
turn to tab 5, page 4? And who is this? that we're-
This is Pinellas.
Pinellas, okay. So here, they have a vision, mission, and core values, where currently, we don't have the core values, but if you look at that, it really,
It's perfect, I mean.
yeah.
Look at their vision, 100% student success.
Real simple, easy.
Yep.
Right.
What is it that
Success
we wanna
is
do?
defined in so many different ways.
Right.
And I think what they've done is and then their mission is what we're doing, educate and prepare each student for college, career, and life. And then in their core values is really where they explain their beliefs and what they value and what they hold to be those things that get to your vision and your mission.
I would be fine with using the vision, that vision and mission, to be honest with you. I don't know it can be improved upon, but then in the core values, you would say the unfolding the full potential, or we
Right.
define success by, you know, you could give it what you feel your definition of success is, creating lifelong learners.
You said something, though, that I really like, which was you mentioned innovate and innovation. And I like somewhere in this,
That could be a core value.
well, maybe, I'm not sure, again, because it's hard. These are important and deeper things to think about than, you know, often as we have to do in this format. But innovation, I think that's hugely important, as we want always to be innovative in what we do. We want to be ahead of the curve. We want to be adapting to new developments, like all of that. And I really like the idea of elevating that notion.
Mrs. Zork? One of the things that I've come to respect from Mrs. Dampier and her team so much over my time in working with them has been the willingness to push teachers to differentiate instruction in the classroom, and not just at an elementary level where we were seeing it more, not in every classroom, but more, but in middle school and high school too. And so that differentiation, that innovation to be willing to say, we need you to reach every student at the level where they are and bring them to where you feel that they can be successful. I think it sounds, I mean, it's such a complicated thing to do in a classroom, but it's truly at the core of how we reach every student, right? So if we could work that in somehow, that's the mindset. The mindset that we have is we're willing to differentiate instruction to unfold the full potential of every child.
And I think that falls in your core
Values.
values. Yeah.
A
Yeah,
willingness to
I really
innovate,
do.
you
I
know,
think
or a-
both of yours. Well, if, you know, when I look at Pinellas's mission, it is very similar to what our vision statement is. So let me just throw this out to you, you know. If you wanted to use the vision 100% student success, which you would then explain down below, or whatever, you could take for the mission statement, because I like the word that you have inspire in addition, rather than, they have educate and prepare, we have educate and inspire. But you could do the educate and inspire every student to be successful, lifelong learners by unfolding the potential of every student. That may be too
Well,
long.
that's
but-
nice. It's long, but it's nice.
But it does capture what all of you have said, but you're flipping those two. Is we're going to educate, we're going to inspire, we want them to be successful, and we're going to do it to be lifelong learners and unfold their potential.
Are you saying that as a mission or vision?
I was saying that as a mission.
As a mission, that's what I thought.
Mission.
And then if you wanted the vision to be one, I don't know whether you want to use, I mean, I heard you like that, I don't know whether you do or you don't, but.
I like it.
I'm not
What,
wild about
this one?
Yeah, I also don't like the idea of, copping Pinellas' statement. I kinda
No,
like
but
the
the thing is,
But that's why I said, when I looked
Yeah.
at it, I thought our statement's so much better in what you just talked about.
Yeah.
But
no,
I
like
think
that.
student success here, if I said student success to someone on the street, and Brian and Chris kind of deal with this all the time with like testing and accountability and data analysis, right? What does success mean? It's very difficult to measure what success is, right? Because some people might tell you that when we had the perfect score FSA, that was success. But then as for Chris, I know, and for the team, the learning gains, and now that's success too, right? Not are you proficient, but are you working? So is proficiency success? Is it, so that, I don't disagree with you that success is such a, the person on the street might say success is an A. Well, is that how we define success?
And I like what you said, because I think the test, the measure is, when we hear it, are we inspired by that statement? Are we proud of that statement, and does it communicate? Do we, as representing the district, would we be lit up to say that thing is like, that's our vision? Like, I want to be lit up by these statements, and I want.
I'm excited to see what that looks like.
Yeah, me too, right. If I'm lit up, I want it to light other people up. To
Yeah,
me,
yeah.
that's a gauge. Like, 100% student success, okay, I'm not really lit up by that
No,
statement.
you're not wrong.
Yeah.
Yours
I
is
get
short,
it.
too.
But just to be fair, I am not above copying somebody else's good info. I don't always need to remake the wheel.
So here's Orange County's, and they've had this one for years, because I knew it by heart when I was an employee there, to be the top producer of successful students in the nation. That was their
See,
vision.
now, that right.
To be
like,
the
does-
I don't like the idea of producing students, though.
Right.
But-
Sorry.
So that may not be
We're not a
the-
factory.
That may be not the wording you want to
Right,
use.
that's
But
just-
that's where Pinellas is getting at, 100% student success, 100% students at proficiency and above, 100% of students being to graduate, 100% of our students are coming in kindergarten ready, 100% of our students are on grade at third grade. Every one of your key performer indicators, 100% students. That's what they're saying.
yeah.
Yeah.
In Knox County, theirs is our vision, excellence for every child. It's very short.
Yeah.
So I don't think-
Hillsborough County is preparing students for life.
Why wouldn't vision be inspiring lifelong learners? The vision is to inspire lifelong learners. Is that what we're trying to do?
Yes, and. I would say yes, but it's incomplete. It's part of what we're trying to do, but not only what we're trying to do.
Terry, you're just gonna have to just,
We need a
Speak-
buzzer system or
speak
something. Get
up.
on the end down here.
Yeah.
I'm never recognized.
no, just,
Okay. I'm a Kids of Hope person, and Kids of Hope says all children are capable of success, no exceptions. And that's the part that I really like about their statement is no exceptions. And so that gets at that 100% success.
That might be
Same thing.
copyrighted.
I was going to say, we
No, it
can't-
is,
we can't
it
take
is,
that one.
it is. But it's saying the same thing, that we're including all children. And I think that's what we're getting around, is inclusion, is we want all kids to be successful. And what does that look like? For one child, it might be that they created a piece of art, and no other child can create that piece
what
of
is
art.
it again? Say it.
I'm sorry?
Can you repeat it again for me?
All children are capable of success, no exceptions. That's part of their statement.
So look at the bottom of page 7 of our strategic plan. And go to the last 2 lines. This is a synthesis statement from our vision and mission. But the 3rd line, halfway in, it says, we do, everything we do, ensure our students are successfully prepared for college, the workforce, and life.
How
Yeah,
about change
that's a
that to
good-
all of our students?
Yeah,
Ensure all.
ensure all students.
This is, we're still on the topic of vision, right? This is our vision? We're talking about this as our vision?
Well, this one kind of gets to a mission part for me because it's something we're doing.
Right.
as opposed
Can
to
I just
the
make a
vision.
suggestion for the next time we do this? This is a conversational thing that we're trying to do as a board. It could not possibly be less conducive to conversation.
Yeah, can we turn this
Can we
table-
turn the table?
Sure.
I mean, is that
Can we
going to be
get up
okay
and
for the
move this
is this
table
on
that way?
camera? Or are we autoing it?
So
Yeah, can we
let's
adjourn?
adjourn. Yeah,
Okay.
Or journey?
yes. 7:59, we're back to order, and we've got ourselves situated where we can actually see each other.
So we have been talking about vision and mission. Vision, remember, and thank you, Mrs. Barrenborg, for bringing that vision is what we aspire to be, meaning the outcome in the future, okay? Mission is what we're going to do now to get there. So we've had a couple different suggestions. By our own book on page 7, we could ensure all students are successfully prepared for college, the workforce, and life. That sounds like a mission statement, but it, maybe you all, want to massage it as a vision. I don't know. We had, we also had educate and inspire every student to be successful lifelong learners, unfolding the potential of every student. That's a possible, that's taking our vision statement now and turning it into a mission statement.
Can I just make a suggestion? Perhaps we could combine or compile all of these different things. I know you
Yeah.
said this wasn't the only time that we'll meet about it, and you could send it out to us, and that way we could look at it on paper, and then kind of, next time we meet, maybe we could come back and be a little bit more clear about, do you know what I mean? I kind of need to
I'm
see it all
happy to do
together.
that. Are there any other comments you want us, and then we'll go through and put some draft visions and some draft missions based on any other feedback on this?
How about as a vision, just a suggestion, how about to educate and inspire all learners to reach their highest potential as lifelong learners? Or,
All children, or all students.
what did I say?
All learners.
All students.
In my personal opinion, again, just
I mean,
my opinion,
that's another,
I prefer to have a vision statement that, that reflects a current state, not something we're moving towards. I prefer to see a vision statement, like that, 100% student success. I don't want that one, but that one says, this is the end state. This is how we know what it looks like when we've achieved it.
Yes.
So to move towards something is a constant state of moving forward. I would prefer in a vision statement something
It's a goal.
that really lights me up as an end state. Like if we achieved this,
So what would make you happy? What
we
would
would
light
be
you up?
happy, we would have accomplished, we would not still be in process.
But what are you
So
thinking?
can you
Always be in
give us
process.
some kind of verbiage to kind of, because I hear what you're saying. To me, you're giving me a philosophy, but I
It's not
don't
very
know the
helpful.
words that would go to that because I'm trying to understand
sure.
an example.
So an end state, this is going to be just off the top of my head, and all students are, all students thrive, all students thrive using their full potential as, I'm sorry, I can't get there like, on the clock, on the
No,
camera.
I understand.
I feel like if we
Okay.
compile these and we see them back, and I like to see things written down, that's just, especially when I'm
So
writing.
here's, could I suggest this, because you're going to take your notebooks with you. We'll kind of go back and put words of what we think we heard you say. I will say, Dr. Schiff, I'm having a struggle putting words to your
I can
thinking.
get there, just not
But if
like-
you are thinking about it the next couple of days, any of you, send us things and we'll add them to the list. Would that work?
Sounds like a plan.
Okay.
Looking up one from another organization.
That would be great if you can
In
send
which
us
I-
samples to help.
Where can I find it?
So next steps on vision and mission is,
I'm sorry. Don't mean to change things a bit, but the top banner on this page here has this community, I'm on page 7. It says a community partnership toward educational excellence. How about our vision, just simply state, educate and inspire every student toward educational excellence? And then the lifelong learner and the unfolding potential could be our mission.
Say that again.
educate and inspire every student toward educational excellence.
Personally, again, I don't want to move towards something, I want to have accomplished something.
Okay, so educate and inspire every student in educational excellence. These are,
it to be less
If we can
fuzzy.
kind of like compile them, because I know for me, in this moment, I'm pretty clear I won't get to that end thing
Okay.
in this. So the more we compile and we can think about and wordsmith would be helpful.
Have we gotten to the graphic yet? Because I'd like to talk about the graphic.
Okay, we haven't gotten there yet. We'll go there. Next, let me just kind of bring closure, if we're all good. If you have any other ideas of wordsmithing that you come up with and you'd like, if you will send them to me, and Nancy and I will compile vision, what we'll kind of, if you label them as vision,
Got it.
we'll put them there. But if you don't label them as anything, we'll try and figure out where we think, using the definition that Mrs. Barrenborn, because that's the definition I would know as well.
Yeah.
And then just send, and that next steps, we will compile a list and bring that to you, and then the next time you can say, we want this, we want this, we want this, okay? All right, so going to the graphic now.
Thank you. So I have all the respect for homeschool parents and guardians who homeschool. I personally don't believe I have the patience to do it, so Godspeed, because, no, seriously, but this homeschool community, I don't know how many people have said to me, like, homeschool community, are you a homeschool community? Like, because there is a homeschooling community, and that's what it's literally called. So I've never liked it. I've always thought it was a weird, like, when people say it, it sounds funny. I think it's confusing. And then all of a sudden, like, I know Jackie had talked about at one point, like, can we change our graphic or incorporate this more? I never loved it, so I was like, how I feel about that, because it gets really small. But then I always really liked the house, and it was very simple. Like, I like really simple graphics, but that homeschool community is just confusing.
The word, it
The
is
wording,
confusing.
homeschool community, because when you
Right.
say it,
Right.
I've had a number of people talk to me about
I
it.
never looked at it that way, but I do
You're,
see it
you're
now.
talking about the.
The wording around the house.
The wording around the house. So that is our district logo. It is not the strategic planning.
So it's not our district logo.
It is our
This
district.
came out of the strategic planning process.
Oh, well, that's the district logo we use on
She's
everything.
referring
is
to the
it?
words
Yeah,
homeschool
the words
community.
were
The
added.
logo, the houses.
The logo in
The
the middle
houses.
is a home, a school, and a representative of the community.
Right.
She's referring to the words around it.
Okay,
So like the chimney is the house, the little school bell is the school, and the flag represents the community.
okay, but isn't that our district logo, because it's on our letterhead?
I love the houses.
Without the words, okay, okay, I'm with you now.
The houses have been around forever.
So you want to get rid of the words.
It's not that I have a problem with any of the words on their own. When we put them together, we're not a homeschool community.
It sounds like it's
Oh, I've
homeschool
got it,
community.
I've got it, I got it, I'm
And
sorry.
if like people will say to you like, oh, or
Yeah.
like if Jackie said, oh, I homeschool, I could say to her like, oh, are you part of the homeschool community,
Yeah.
homeschooling community? Like,
Got it.
So what if we just had School District of Indian River County put around there instead?
I
Yeah,
like that.
yeah.
I like that.
That makes it real simple and easy, and that's what we are.
Makes it our seal.
Yeah,
But I think we should keep the houses, and I would really
Yeah.
love to see the houses behind there on that wall, but that's another story.
I told you, I wanted the welding department to weld
Oh, that'd
a
be awesome.
really cool metal, to do the logo in metal.
Oh, that would be cool.
And hang it back there like a piece of modern art, and then we would utilize the welding. That was-
okay, I have consensus to change
Yes.
and make the school district of Indian River, so then it becomes like our seal.
I mean, it's right.
Yeah,
I'm okay, I know what Mrs. Justice is talking about with regard to because once before, I've brought this up before you came on, joined us here.
Right.
I brought this forward because I am a strong believer in the strategic plan driving every decision. And just a little background for you, my purpose for bringing it forward, I think it was in January and February, I'm not sure, was to talk about how can we utilize this entire logo more so
Right.
that we're not just creating a document and putting it on the side, so that it is a reminder of all of our goals within our district. The strategic plan logo itself holistically, I kind of like it. Kristen said that oftentimes when you take this logo and you shrink it or put it on a letterhead, I put it on my business cards. You can't read student success
Right.
as legibly as you can when it's this big.
Right.
So I get it, I understand, but I wanted it on my business cards because I think it's important. When I give it to someone, I
Right.
want them to know that these are our main goals. This formatting here with the circles are kind of nice too, if we were to think about for the future. Because if we are ever going to, let's say we decide in the future that we are no longer going to have communication and engagement, we can very easily just remove that and just replace it with something else. Or if we were going to add a sixth component, for example, we can just rearrange the circles and add a sixth one there, if that was the case. It's not a very complicated logo in that it can be edited for our future goal, overarching goals. That's really my point. But that's really a follow-up to what Mrs. Justice is saying when she said that I brought this forward in the past. That's where it was coming from.
Our recommendation was to keep the graphic. Now what we'll do is change the wording, and then we'll decide what these circles are and how many.
Yeah.
I mean, then you're not doing a total 100% revamp.
Right.
You know, with that. Okay. All right, if you'll go to tab 2, the next question that I have is that, do you want to include guiding principles?
Yes. Well,
It's like the
Is
same
that-
as core values.
right, that's my question.
So some strategic plans will have guiding principles and they'll have core values. Some will have core values, others will have guiding principles and beliefs. As I was looking through, I have to readily admit that I kind of liked the Pinellas County, the way they structured it in their core values. That's just me giving you my opinion. They did not have guiding principles, they just went into their core values, and then they put them in different categories.
Can I make a suggestion on that? What if we, I like the core values as well. What if we just take our 5 circles here and we do it right in order and we make a core value or 2 at each of the circles? And that way it's all related. In other words, we're taking from the logo and we're going right to the core value instead of adding other things.
I'm going to disagree. I feel like it's different. Because the areas, the 5 areas, strategic plan areas, are outlined later in the strategic plan, and there's a lot of information about them. I think the core values, I mean, what I like about Pinellas is the fact that it's an outline form, so it's, you know,
But that's what I'm saying. But if you look at theirs, it's connected to the
Right,
5
but-
circles.
but I like the fact that, like, if you look at cultural competence, by saying that it's a core value, it's an overarching goal. There are some things that are going to be core values no matter where you are in any of these things.
Of
So,
course.
right, but rather than have each of these areas and then state something like underneath each area, I like the fact that what you say with the core value is all of these things, we come at every area here with all of these things in mind as guiding principles. And I kind of like guiding principles because I
Well,
mean,
it's a-
or core values, I don't really care.
It's a web.
Yeah, right, I understand. So one of the things that when we were doing the strategic plan and that we tried to do, but I think we fell short, was Sean Frost had said that equity needed to be woven through the entire plan. And if you go back and watch the strategic planning process, he did say that. And the intention was there, but it didn't happen. It didn't, right? So by saying something like cultural competence, speaking about that, or speaking about equity in your core values, what you're saying is that there's a lot of other stuff in here, but unless you read that core value page, those are the directions for how you know which way we're heading. Do you know what I mean? Like,
What are we going to do with this? Once we produce this paper, when are we going to go back to it and say, this is important? Are we going to go back to it when we're talking about negotiations? Are we going to go back to it when we're talking about budget planning? Are we going to go back to it? That's
so
what I'm saying.
when Mara talks about what lights you up, core values light me up.
Right.
That idea that, there are some things that, to me, I'd love the core value page to be like when when you're a board member, sometimes you find yourself in places where you start to question your judgment, or, people come at you from all different directions. The core value should be somewhere where you can come back and center yourself
Right.
on what your belief system is and how you're gonna approach every situation. So that's all I have to say about it. So while I understand
agree
what you're
with that,
saying, I just feel like I want this to be like a centering.
I see the core values kind of like when you're building a house, that's your foundation. You can remodel the house as much as you want, and I see our strategic goals as the remodeling of the house as you go along. But the core values, to me, is the foundation that will never change.
In the work that I sometimes do outside of here, in restorative work, we start from values. We always build up from values, and it informs everything. So the first thing you do in a restorative encounter, well, it's the second or third thing, but you always start from a place of identifying the values. I could see, frankly, us doing something like having gotten clear and succinct in the values, we say them.
Yeah.
Every time we're up there. We say them at the beginning of every meeting. They become so ingrained into the work that we do and the way we interact with ourselves and others that it becomes so clear people are almost tired of hearing them, because at a certain point, they're so
Part of the fabric.
they're so,
woven into the fabric.
exactly, they're so woven into what we do. Like, every time we start a meeting, we have an invocation, we have an indication. Why wouldn't we say, and these are our core values with, I think
remind
they should
everyone,
be
yeah.
something that informs everything we do and everything we interact and enters into every space where we interact with each other or with the public.
I like that,
let's look at
but if
the-
we do that, we need to be short and succinct.
That's my
Otherwise, our meeting's
point.
gonna be quick.
Right, so if you look at the guiding principles, where's the guiding principles page that we have on 7?
So if you go in tab 2, I've given you some samples. So let me just tell you what you have. We pulled from other things. The guiding principles, that's what I put out as superintendent. You can pull any of that. Then I just pulled samples here and gave you a list. This is in
where are
tab
you?
Tab 2.
Tab 2.
Okay, this is page 2 of tab 2. And you could go through and highlight. I'm going to tell you tab 3, and I'm going to disclose where I got this from, because we were at a visioning session with the Learning Alliance on early childhood. This is the draft of there, and they knew I was sharing this with you. But it's an example of, and they did a good job writing their values. That's just a point of information. You have Pinellas in page 4. Look at pages 5, 6, and 7, though.
Did you write this, number 1? Did you write?
Those are mine.
They're fantastic.
That's what
Yeah,
she
yeah,
said those
yeah,
on her
that
interview.
I
She
got,
handed
yeah.
us a
Right,
paper with these
but-
from minute 1.
I mean, I don't know, why wouldn't we just be using those?
Can we?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah.
they
that-
copyright?
no,
How much is it gonna cost? No, I'm just kidding.
No, I mean, you can. And so, Orange County and Hillsborough, their values are just words. High integrity. I tend to like more of a statement, because a value to me, like what you're talking about, not only is that what you're saying you're living by, but you're actually living by that. That you're communicating, that's the expectation, that when they see the school board working, they see any employee in our district, they're working and they're walking the walk in addition to talking the talk.
Well, and I could see
Yeah.
Laura at the beginning of the meeting saying, we want to remind everyone of the guiding principles of the school district, leading with integrity, we are united in purpose, and we are committed to excellence. And now we'll call this board meeting to, or whatever. I don't, that's pretty clear, reminds
like
me about
united
what we
in
need to do.
purpose.
All
United in
students
I
purpose.
like that.
Yeah.
All students are our number 1 priority.
I would even just say students are our number 1 priority. You like all?
No, I like acknowledging the fact that our district includes students and adults who support those students, and that when we dichotomize students from the adults, it communicates something competitive or something adversarial, and I don't want to do that.
And
I would tend to disagree
Is there a
there.
purpose to educate children?
The purpose is to
But we're all
educate
on the
students.
same team.
Yeah,
But how we do, we we care about the adults in our district too.
But here's the thing, I have to say this, because this came
Wait,
out of
I was
impasse.
saying something.
sorry, go
I was saying before, sorry. I was saying something. I would disagree with you on that point. Staff members and teachers are incredibly important. Faculty and staff are incredibly important. Without them, we would never be able to educate our students. But even they are in it for the students. Even they are working for the education of our children. So putting our children first really ought to be the very essence of what education is. It's for the children. It doesn't negate,
Totally agree.
it does not negate the fact that we honor our faculty and staff at all. I don't believe that if we did not include faculty and staff or teachers in our core values, that might intend to mean to someone that they're less important to us, or that we don't honor or respect the work that they do. I just think that when we're doing our core values, it really is the place of thinking ahead of what is the main purpose and reason why we are here. You know, anyone's values are what is number one. I mean, it would be number one or number two. In this case, we're doing a few of them, of what means the most to us. Not that teachers don't, but students are the purpose why we're here, to educate, obviously, to inspire, obviously, and to teach them so that they can grow up to be functioning citizens in this world, to give them options of choice so that they can choose what is best for them. So in this instance, I would slightly disagree with, you know, what you were just saying.
And I hear what you're saying, and I was criticized, I've been criticized, I've seen a little criticism on social media about some of the things that I've said in the past. My husband and I have 4 children. There are a lot of things that we could do in our house that would make our lives easier for us. But we make certain decisions because it's what's best for the kids. And all adults need to do that. All adults, teachers, staff members, and I think they do it every day. Everyone in this district office, you put the children first. You know, it'd be nice if my kids went to bed at 7, because then I could go and take a shower and go to bed too. But they don't go to bed at 7. I've got a teenager up at 9:30 doing homework, so I've got to be up and with her. So I know I'm oversimplifying, but what I mean is, and when I say things at impasse or whatever, and it becomes misconstrued that I somehow don't value teachers or I absolutely do value the adults. The kids need the adults, but if we're always putting kids first, that should be what's best for adults. Always putting kids first, so.
Can we just remember
That's
that
what I
this
mean
is
by
everybody's guiding principle, not just the board's? And I think if we're all looking at the mission and the goal is to educate our children and make them the best, I'm a teacher. That's my goal. That's my goal.
Can I make a suggestion to add to this? Because we have employees, we have, students, but I really think that we need to add something in here. We can wordsmith it as much as we want, but we strive to include parents and caregivers as participants in their children's education. Partners.
Say that again?
Oh,
What did you just say?
we strive to include parents and caregivers as partners in their children's education. I feel like we need
To add that in as a value?
As a fourth.
Yeah.
Well, that goes right along with,
fine.
if you look at the vision and mission and the goals up here, it says a community partnership towards educational excellence. So if you're looking at that, that's exactly what you're saying.
Dr.
But in
Schiff,
the guiding principles.
is
I was looking.
the statement you're having the most trouble with is just the one that's underlined here? The other bullet points are,
No, I don't actually have a problem with that.
okay.
I don't have a problem with that. So an analogy I used once at a conference that kind of gained some traction was the notion of when you're on a plane and they say to you, if the plane loses pressure, put your mask on first before you can help, the child next to you. And I don't want to forget, I don't want to not acknowledge the oxygen we need to give to everybody. And so what I'm aiming, I'm not disagreeing. What I'm trying to avoid doing is dichotomizing, that by supporting one, we're somehow not supporting the other, or by suggesting we take care of students, it somehow says everything else is seconded to that, because it's not. It's part of a whole environment within which we sit. And if we don't also acknowledge, you talk about your husband and your kids. I have a different experience, but it's to the same point. Weird in a public space, but in order to take care of my child, I had to make certain concessions in the relationship I have with his other parent.
Right.
In doing that, I was supporting me, I was supporting his other parent in service of my son, certainly. But it wasn't,
It couldn't be to the detriment of you.
it couldn't be to the detriment of what I needed to do in order to create a whole environment that worked, a holistic environment where it all works, not just prioritizing one element of that environment.
So can you give us some wording that would add to this? I mean, I hear
Yes,
what you're
but maybe not
saying,
in this
yeah.
moment.
Okay,
What
so-
about we're all on the same team? Doesn't that say? Every employee at every level in every department works toward the same mission to provide every student with individual opportunities to excel. I mean, that's about as good as it gets to me. Everybody.
Again, I'm not saying that these are not good or not
But I
right.
hear you saying something's missing here that addresses
Yes.
the adults.
That addresses
So,
like, in permaculture, for example, you don't fertilize the tree at the expense of the grass. You put things next to each other that
Right.
support each other,
So-
and that's what I'm trying to
would you,
create.
in the next couple days or
Yes.
week, put wording, so I'm gonna put down here that you're gonna give me some wording about the adults that we could then bring for,
Yes,
would that work?
yes.
Okay, great.
Rosario.
I just wanted to go to I have two comments. The second bullet reads, "We're all on the same team. Every employee at every level in every department works toward the same mission, to provide every student with individual opportunities to excel." With the inclusion here of every employee, with what Dr. Schiff is going to suggest fit in this second bullet?
Could be.
Or would it be something to replace the description of this second bullet?
Both?
Both,
It depends
either
on what
or.
she
Okay.
has for wording,
Mm-hmm.
I think, because
Or
when
add
she.
to it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Because
So
we
it would
already have
either-
employee here.
It would either be
Okay.
a fifth bullet,
Okay,
or it might be
Might fit
something that could
in
be
excellence.
edited in there.
What about something about our school family? We are committed to supporting every member of our school family at every level in every department.
I like that. I like the family part.
Something, like, I don't know that that's the wording yet, but that's the intention. One doesn't thrive without the other.
I understand that.
You
No,
know?
you're right. I mean.
So I think if we
I
could
hear what
get
you're
one more
saying.
bullet that captures that family, adult,
well, I actually think that this second bullet, instead of saying we're on the same team, that is the united in purpose.
We are united
So
in
rather
purpose.
than what is underlined is we are on the same team, it would state instead, we are all united in one purpose, or we're all united in purpose. And then, in the description, explain, we are on the same team. We include family, whatever.
we could add a sentence or two, maybe, that's
Yeah, I
what we
think
do.
that's
That is
Yeah.
where our united in purpose really, I mean, I think it ought to be.
Something about supporting and encouraging each other
So
to create
we,
a the
maybe Dr.
environment.
Schiff, we can get and add a sentence or two in that description and keep it to the four that we have, yeah.
I did have, my second comment was on the third bullet. I'm having issue with the word results here. Everything else, okay, so we are committed to excellence. We embrace innovation, monitor progress, focus on results, and make every day and every effort better than the last. That word results gives me this test-focused,
Okay.
teaching to the test kind
Or
of
change it to success.
feeling.
Okay.
But I was actually thinking instead that we focus on, and I'm taking this in part from Miami-Dade's values, under their equity. They have a value here under equity, so it's kind of in part. So we embrace innovation, monitor progress, focus on fostering an environment that serves all students as our number one priority.
Focusing, would you read that again? Focusing
That we
on,
focus on fostering
okay,
an environment that serves all students as our number one priority.
You could do the unfold full potential there.
You could do the, but she might put that in our mission.
Right, but if you don't, you could put that on, we are
Right.
focused on,
That's exactly right.
that
that
I got,
unfolds the
that
full potential
serves
of
all
every child.
students. Could you read the rest of that for me?
Fostering an environment that
That
serves
serves
all
all
students as our number one priority.
Okay. Thank you.
But Mrs. Justice is right. If we don't choose the mission statement that we were talking about earlier,
Yep.
wait, I'll wait
That-
for you to, so we
Good,
don't.
no, I got it.
If we
Mhm,
don't
thank you.
select the mission statement that includes
The unfolding
the
potential.
unfolding the potential of the lifelong learner, we can actually put that in this place instead.
this was great, Dr.
Okay,
Moxley.
okay, all right.
Really good.
So we can either call it core values, we can call it guiding principle, whatever, but I'll work with that one page and get the wording
Can
together.
I just want to ask staff, can I ask staff a question?
Sure.
What do you think about core values versus guiding principles? Do you have any preference on what that would be called or how that would, I'm curious what your thoughts are on it.
I think core value speaks to you as a person, whereas guiding principle speaks more to the organization. So I might have a core value that defines who I am, but that really doesn't have a place necessarily in the organization.
Do you like guiding principles?
For this, I do.
Do you have any other
But it's,
suggestions?
I mean, honestly, like, that's
I understand,
how I
but-
define the two, and I don't think I'd have a problem with either one of them. It's,
I prefer the guided principles because it speaks to, like you said, the work that we're doing and what we believe.
Yeah, it'll guide the organization, so I agree.
And it speaks to the whole organization. It's like, this is what.
What
our
about
guiding-
core beliefs?
Belief is hard. Belief is a fuzzy, I mean, it's a hard word.
What we believe.
Yeah, but belief is hard. I mean, you know.
Well, what
I
what
don't
is
know if
your,
people
what is
believe it's
your, what is your feedback on that? Just, not that we're going to go there, but I just want to.
Okay.
I think
That's right.
core values, core beliefs, I think that in education, there are a couple opinions, and it can be your core value, but that might not necessarily play out in what the organization
Can I,
does. But again, we're thesaurusing a little bit, and
Yes and no, but I just wanted
Yeah.
your opinion on it. I thought the your separation of the two made sense.
I think so too, but it also makes me think, because, you know, we are an institution made up of individuals, right? And we bring that. What if we have guiding principles and our guiding principles are informed by our core values? That's, because I really do like the idea of having values in this. What I'm not entirely comfortable with is, you know, the 5, 6, 7 of us deciding the core values for the 2,000 people in the district. And I don't know that we have the time or the luxury of having a more inclusive process around that. But
Totally
job
agree
is
with
to-
you, but that's
Yeah.
why we're elected officials in this position, to drive
Policy.
the policy, to drive the vision, and to drive the district in this capacity.
And I'm not disagreeing with that, but there are certain values are very personal, right? And values are personable to every individual who looks at them and who, to me, values are an inclusive process. I don't know that we have the time or the luxury of doing that right now, but I can't tell Terry what her values are. I can't tell Chris what his values are. I can only say, you know, what mine are in this. And so moving forward in that process, I'd like to see it as kind of an iterative process, but I like the idea of maybe having guiding principles informed by values.
I want to ask you a question.
I was going to say,
Yeah.
I was agreeing with, as far as the guided principle, it says this is, it sort of says, well, this is what we believe in as an organization, but it means to me more personable. These are our principles, this is what we believe in, without actually saying the belief where you can get into people saying, well, you're telling me that's really not what I believe. It's a little different if you use guided principles, the word guided principles. It takes that out of it.
Yeah, and it says, my question to you would be, if you were interviewing someone and let's just say we're interviewing the superintendent, right? These are our guiding principles. We agree with what the guiding principles are. If we interviewed somebody and we said, how do you feel about these guiding principles for the district? And they had a problem with leading with integrity, everybody being on the same team or being committed to excellence, we'd say, have a nice day. So it's okay to have a threshold, and like it or not, we're kind of in the place where we're the ones who have to, you know.
Can
Go
you know,
ahead, go ahead.
I make a point, can you look at tab 3, page 1, number 2? I just think when you're doing this in the guiding principles, I think this would help. If you keep in mind relationships first,
Yeah.
and when you're writing these, and then positive and supportive culture, I think we're gonna hit that value part that goes with the guiding principles. I agree with you, I think, it's important to have values, but we all have different values, but if we have guiding principles, we all can agree that, yes, this is something we can agree to. But I think those two statements right there are really important that were put forward. Of relationships first and positive and supportive culture. Those are things that when we ran for election, we heard over and over again. And we know that that's something that we're improving on or trying to improve on.
So we'll take and inform that in.
Yeah, please do, because when you think
would be
about
good.
the relationship first aspect, I mean, I think that's a guiding principle. We believe in relationships.
Yeah.
We believe in putting relationships first. I mean, we know that no learning happens in the classroom without that relationship.
So if we can put those two
Yes, we will.
bits in there.
Yes,
somehow.
we will.
Good
Thank
try.
you. And I think one of the things we want to think about is
Yeah, yeah.
what you as a board are doing is you're setting the pace or the expectation, what all of us, how we're all going to, our way of work, if you will, our way of professionally acting, the expectation is how we're going to do our way of work.
So, Dr.
Here, that we're
Moxett,
going to do it within integrity. We're going to do it building relationships. We're going to do it with respect to all students and all individuals, those kinds of things.
I was asked a question when someone said, what's your meeting about today? I said, we're going over the strategic plan. And someone said, why are you doing that when you have a new superintendent that's going to be coming in? Don't you want to do that with the new superintendent? And I said, work can't stop. I saw a board stop doing some work because they wanted to wait for a new board to come in, and I never felt comfortable with that. I know we struggle with that a bit. What's your opinion about?
I've thought about this.
Yeah.
Because we could put it off, and then you'd be in January, February, and you're not going to do this in a day or two. You're going to, we are going to be very, very lucky if come January you have a finished product, to be honest, because it's going to take us, because you're not here for, we're not doing a 3-day, and you don't do it in 3 days, but you do it in sections along the way. So my thinking was, for me, is to get a framework together, to start building it, so you have a draft. It will help you during the interview process for you to have this discussion, because it frames what you're going to talk about next this morning. But then, out of respect to whomever your new superintendent is allow them to come in and review and give you some feedback. And
So one of the first meetings we have with them should be, can we review the
Yeah,
strategic plan together?
absolutely.
Do you have any feedback? Because we're working towards a final draft.
Absolutely.
Okay.
One of the things that, from a past experience that we looked at collectively as a group is because after every 2 years, you have an election. That one of the school boards that I was working with, they had a policy that every January after an election, it was mandatory by the board, by policy, to come back and review the strategic plan because it honored whomever was elected to the board. If there was no change, they still did it. They still looked at it and said, okay, are we still good with this moving forward? If there was a change, whether it was one person, 2 or 3 people, they came back and the new board had an opportunity to look at it. So that was how they did a systemic kind of way of work to keep things moving whether faces change. If a superintendent changed, it was automatic. Whatever time period the superintendent, there was a window of time that strategic plan had to come back and be looked at.
Yeah. I think it makes sense. I think one of the things I've struggled with is we went through the strategic planning process. It was interesting. There were things I liked about it. There were things I didn't like about it. But I think one of the things I struggled with as a board member was the fact that, we were here for 2 years. we worked on this. Some of our voice is in it, some of it isn't our voice. But we had kind of a toxic environment where there's some good things about this. There was a lot of work, a lot of district staff that worked on this quite a bit. And so this idea that you have a new board, you come in and you change everything, the toxicity of the past has unfortunately tainted the document to a certain degree. Do you know what I mean? So when you guys came on, you were like, strategic plan isn't working, it's not working, it's broken, we don't have SMART goals, I think it's important to remember, and you'll see if you have new board members that come on, that the work that you do needs to be valued and respected, right? Because people come in with new ideas. But we're in an interesting place right now with 3 new board members and a new superintendent. That's about as green as would you agree? That's about as,
It gives different perspectives and.
I mean, it's
yes,
good.
yeah,
I'm not saying
having
it's
a
bad,
past
it's just, if you could
experience,
shake up the snow globe, we shook it up as much as we could. Does that make sense? So, as we move forward, I hope there's some things that are good that we get to keep.
And you're doing a revision, you're not doing a complete overhaul. If you're doing a complete overhaul, then there's a whole major process
Yes.
that you should be having community town halls and, because you're doing a whole,
I guess my point was, we have a new superintendent that's gonna be coming in and working with them. I just wanna make sure that we leave the space for them to be able to feel that it's theirs too.
I think you
I
can.
think, can I make a point of what you just said? I don't not value the work that was done. The only criticism I had was the SMART goal. And that's a tweak, that's an addition. That's not a criticism of that work wasn't done, it was, this can be improved. Any document that's created can be improved upon time, because as we progress, we improve things. So I don't think we're not valuing the work that was done, because I can't imagine starting this from scratch. I'm sure that was a lot of work.
You can ask them, they know. Chris
Well,
is- I mean,
So I
honestly,
think if
I
we keep
don't
that in mind.
take it as criticism because I know when we both started this, there wasn't anything.
Right.
And, and even though it wasn't to perfection, at least it was a starting point
Exactly.
for us to look at, improve, and for me, I knew this was something that was going to constantly need tweaked, and so that's perfectly,
And I think also we found areas, I know I submitted 2 of them, that maybe weren't included here that I felt should be included. Now, my fellow board members might not think that way, but that was something that I felt like, oh, I see something that maybe they didn't consider. So I think as we move forward, I think that's the way we need to look at it, is that we can just improve a document that's here.
So, go ahead.
If we could, maybe reframe this as the strategic plan is a living document. It's not something that is stagnant in time, and if we look at it as a stagnant document, then we're not actually doing our job. The point is that this is a document that lives, that evolves, that breathes with changes in. It honors the ancestry of the document, but it also honors sort of the youth and moving forward.
Well,
of the
it's a
document.
5-year strategic plan. I want, and the superintendent's driving the ship, right, or steering the ship. I just want to make sure that they feel ownership over, because I'd like someone to be here for more than.
Well, and I
3
think with
years.
and with a superintendent coming in, to whatever is the configuration of the board at that time, the superintendent also needs to be able to work within the construct that they've got. If this is the strategic plan that they've got, that's his or her job.
Sure.
And, but this document has to be a moving, breathing document. It has to be continually subject to changes in the time, the environment, the people. And if we don't think of it that way, I think we do ourselves a disservice.
Okay, we probably have about 7 minutes left of our time before we need to move to the next topic that is on the agenda. I think I'm going to ask you 2 questions, or 1 question, and kind of give 2 options, and then if you reject either one of them, then we'll come back to another, and that's okay if you do. So you have the current format of this, and if your thinking is that we're only going to tweak a few of these and maybe add a few, that's fine, then this probably would be, keep this format. The staff, we talked about, and that's what's behind tab 4. Let me just walk through what you have in tab 4. And then this will end with, let me tell you what's there, let me tell you what our thinking is, and then we're going to send you with the homework to think about this, so when we come back, we know, or you can give me individual feedback. So as a team, we kind of went back and said, we really saw that we needed to honor the work of the equity committee and the equity plan and that achievement gap, that disparity in discipline and those kinds of things. So we came together, and so on page 2, which is this was our attempt of our thinking. We're sharing that with you. And in this particular one, we identified, and I will be honest with you, when they brought to me my first week here, that 12 or 14-page spreadsheet that was this long, I will tell you that even though I was a business major, I went on significant overload. And to this day, I still can't wrap my arms around all the statistics in it to get, so it was too much. And I'm thinking, if I'm having a hard time with that, what would it be for a community member who doesn't live and breathe education every day when they want to know, do I have employees to go to work? Did they get a high school diploma? Did they master to proficiency or above proficiency? Did they get into college? Did they get, so those kinds of things. So we went back with a key performance indicator mindset of saying, if the public, what could make this most user-friendly? Well, this is a representation of what our thinking was. And you may not like it, and that's okay. We'll do it however you want to, but I'm just food for thought. So we started with this arrow, not anything but other than it's an arrow like moving forward, moving ahead, moving into the future, everybody moving forward, and student success is the main thing. But the green arrow is kind of the encompassing that strategic partnerships and equity touches everything. It touches adults, it touches the hiring, it touches professional development, it should touch our finances, everything encompasses there. And that's where we put the achievement gap. That would be and not just the African American achievement plan, but closing the achievement gap for all groups, poverty, students with disabilities, Hispanic, and the African American achievement. And you may have several plans that fall up under there, and the discipline disparity, if those were priorities. Again, could be anything you want. But within that, because we have strategic partners across the board, then we have the student success circle. We have a high-quality workforce circle. We added in excellence in business and innovation because I kept hearing innovation, 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 and we kept hearing that we've got to do something to be strategic about our finances and linking the strategic plan to the finances and the budget. And so we have that there. And then we grouped culture, climate, and communication together. So again, we stayed with 5 buckets, if you will. We can easily make it 6. And then what we did is we looked and said, okay, if I were the average public person, what were the key performance indicators? And you'll see those in the little boxes. And again, they can be anything you want. We just went at it from that framework. And again, we need to identify if you want the bubbles to stay the same. We tweaked them a little bit. And this page in your packet is what we tweaked it to, just so you can compare. That was page 1, yeah,
okay.
there. And I know I'm passing for some more information before you stop and pause. And also in this section, we really looked at Knox County, and here's a page out of Knox County. This is page 3 in that section. And if you look at it, they'll have their first goal. Focus on every student is theirs. They have, why is this important? So it's like Simon Sinek's begin with the why. We're telling everybody, why is this important to us? Why is it so important that we're addressing this? And we have a snippet there for that. And how will we do this? Well, these are the things you will see being done. These are your objectives, strategies, tasks, whatever you want to call them. And obviously, then at the left side, you'll see the performance targets. There they are. And so with that, Brian, being the creative one he is, he attempted to start to put a template together. And so the next document you'll see, and it will not be my picture there, Brian.
I like that.
No, I do not. But then he started to put a template together that, okay, if we were doing this, we would start to build it out, and then the meat would go into it. So that was just our thinking there. And then the last page here is that, that 14-long page, we would take the 18 key performance indicators, and we would build, okay, here's what the indicator is, here's the definition and descriptor, and then over here, here's current state, here's your target state. Maybe you would have your aspirational target, which obviously with students would be 100%, but then you would have set multiple years to measure, so you would get trend data. And I can wrap my arms around a page or 2 pages, but that was our best thinking, and this was looking at it from a macro, and then my vision would be each department, along with each school, would then have a sheet that takes each one of these circles, and they would put their SMART goal that is for their department.
Love it.
Because if finance, they should have a SMART goal for student success.
Absolutely.
Maybe it's turnaround time for processing purchase orders to get equipment in the hands of teachers and students. Maybe that's what it is. Bus drivers, transportation, maybe it's 98% on-time arrival, and we're measuring it against that, whatever it might be. But if that's how they're supporting student success, because they're impacting academic learning time.
Awesome.
So those are just thinking, but that's a training and a process. But that was our thinking, just for a point of conversation.
So when do we say yay or nay, or is this the time?
Well, I know that, I want to make sure that we respect the second agenda item, and I know you're going to have lots of conversation on that. If I wanted to introduce it, if you wanted to think about it, if you wanted to say 5 minutes, have comments about it, and then we come back and we schedule another time. If you want to just,
Can we go until
Stop.
11 and then take a 5-minute bathroom break and then come back again? Unless we have 9 minutes until 11.
okay,
So I think it's,
Right.
oh,
And then we'll go over here.
sorry.
Go ahead.
In general, overall, love the suggestion. I think it's great, I think it's readable, I think it's clear, I think it's user-friendly. So in general, overall, yes. There are things that I would tweak as we move forward, and I know we have to do that, but the one thing that because I know we'll tweak some of the specific goals. We haven't gotten to that part of the conversation yet.
right.
One thing, though, I really like the notion of this arrow, and I like the way you explained it. I don't know that that's immediately obvious, so I want to
Right.
think about how we
Okay.
make that immediately obvious. And the other thing is I almost want, like outside of the green arrow, I want the relationship thing. Like it all sits inside the relationships, or I want within the green arrow, something that highlights the relationships first, which I had mentioned on my notes to
Okay.
you, in all of that. So but in general, as just a statement of, do I like the format, do I like the intention? Absolutely, I think it's terrific. And I think it improves considerably in communicating broadly with, what are our goals and intentions. So
Good feedback, thank
that's a yes from me.
Rosario, or Mrs. Rosario.
All of a sudden, we're on a team.
Yes.
I love the format. I love the suggestion. I love the work that you put in. Brian, you put the work in this,
Yeah, thanks, Brian.
what it might look like. Just a quick, this is not really my major comment, but when we change the wording inside of this logo here, if it sits next to school district, we're just gonna have a
Don't put the
duplicate?
wording.
Yeah.
Or what are we doing
I would
there?
just do the houses.
Just
I
the
would just
house
do the
alone?
houses, yeah.
Okay, so whenever there's the wording, we're not gonna have it duplicated twice? It's just really, just a question?
No, that's good.
Okay. So we'll basically have just then 2 house logos, one alone, and then one with the
Yeah.
school district veneer, okay. My question about the key performance indicators here.
Right.
On this arrow is, though I love how this was created, I don't see, is this for us, or is this going to be included in the document?
It would be included in the
So
document.
is it included in the document in this format with the arrow going up? Because if that's, as someone's turning the page, do they read and then turn and
I
come back?
don't see it
just
going up,
format?
I see it going across landscape.
I like going up there.
I'm just saying,
That-
because
that- yeah.
we have to envision it now
Yep.
in terms of when someone opens up the booklet. Because
Right,
now we're changing the
right.
entire format,
Well,
right?
if we
So
do
when
it,
someone turns the
So-
booklet, I'm just curious as to if that's something that we
So if I could clarify
consider,
that.
and then just rotate the
Yeah.
the words going up,
we
just a
could do
thought.
that, we could do that.
The other thing is student success. All of these are key indicators for student success academically, but I don't see the social and emotional components. There are other indicators of student success. So are we only going, it might not be a
Yeah.
question for, full, but are we only going to include only
No,
test indicators essentially, or do you see what I'm?
I do.
Okay.
I do, I just didn't want to interrupt.
That's okay.
What you were saying.
Go for it, interrupt me.
What we saw along the top there, those were the gatekeepers
Okay.
to proficiency on the academic side of the house.
Good.
Okay, not to exclude your social emotional. And you may have in your document an objective that you will put that, and you may, it's not that we're not, there's so much more we're gonna measure. We're
know.
gonna measure everything that's on those 14 pages.
Yeah.
It's just that when we're communicating to the public and you're putting that district report card, these are the gatekeepers, if you will, like kindergarten readiness, that's the gatekeeper of how you measure your early learning,
Yeah.
or, you know, early VPK, all those programs coming in, that's a gatekeeper, and you want to close that gap. You know, third grade is a gatekeeper, you know, so these are more what goes into the student, or the school grade and the district grade, if you will, if you think about that.
The social emotional is also in the culture, climate.
Culture and
Culture.
climate.
Education, as well as the strategic partnerships
Yeah.
with the discipline disparity.
I see that. I just want to make sure that that I understand
Yeah.
that these are the academic components.
Correct.
Because it says student, what we have here is student success. And I know this is a work in progress. This is our first meeting, but when we see student success, me as an educator, I know there are many
So
Different
we may need to clarify that those are
avenues.
academic.
Academic, right.
Student, academic success.
And even gatekeeper to academic proficiency, I mean, gatekeepers to
Yeah.
academic, I mean, I like
Yeah.
that wording too. It's
Yeah.
very unique, and yet it means exactly the same thing.
Yeah, yeah.
So with
Okay, great.
high-quality workforce, you have retention rate, diversity of staff, investment in staff. Investment in staff is very open for me. I don't know if we are talking there about leadership opportunities, training, professional development. Might we
Yes.
be able to,
You would build this is a category, if
Yeah.
you will. So remember, you're starting macro, and now you're kind of coming down. Actually, it would be like this, I guess, you know, if you think about it. Because now you're going to build, investment in staff that could be your leadership.
Yeah.
That could be
Training.
your training. It could be your.
Professional development,
Yeah, anything you're doing
modules.
to develop people.
that's what,
Yeah. And so really, we didn't go any deeper.
yeah.
But
This is just the
behind each one
overarching.
of these buckets, you'll have objectives, you'll have,
Okay,
people sometimes call them strategies, action steps. There's a variety of words you might use, but underneath each one of these, that will build the meat. I mean, that's actually where you're going to get to when what you
you
normally have.
open it up and you see the
It's
individual.
this.
Yeah.
It's all this meat.
So, under climate, culture, and communication, there's student attendance five-star school status, it says student and parent survey. Without question, I would add a fourth and include the faculty and staff surveys.
We may
That's
go ahead,
definitely
we
been a
may,
big
sure.
Concern of ours in our
We may just
stakeholder
call it
surveys.
stakeholder
I like-
surveys.
That's fine. But I definitely don't want to exclude faculty
So
and
we can-
staff in there.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, stakeholder surveys and
Yeah,
include all.
and we'll put it all
That's-
together.
Keep
I
it-
mean, you'll
don't
get
add a
them
new one.
separately, but it'll be in that bucket.
And would student attendance fall in this category and not in
Which
the,
category?
in the culture, climate, and communication, as
Yes.
opposed to the other student success?
Actually, I think that's where it is now. That's where it resides now, so that's
Culture
why
and
we just,
climate.
we put it there for a point of discussion.
I don't think it should go in culture and climate. I think it should be in the other category of student success.
Well, I think there was something that we had always looked at, culture and climate. We looked at employee attendance, because when you had a high-level absence from employees, that signified the culture and
Maybe.
climate was, in
Same thing with
trouble.
students, if they don't want to come to school, that's probably a
Okay,
cultural
I
thing.
mean, that's fine.
Yes,
It's
and I
good to hear.
think with the staff.
I
or
understand that.
teacher, I think that fell in the retention bucket.
Oh, did it?
I
Okay.
think, but I'll double check. I'm going to make a note about that.
But that does go to culture and climate.
Yes, it does. I
And-
think that's where we ran into, that's why your document became 14 pages, because the same statistic that kept appearing, because it fell in,
Different
you
places.
know, multiple buckets.
And my last comment on this arrow is I love the equity piece on here. And I love the achievement gap and the discipline disparity. But I think that strategic, because we have so many important strategic partnerships, I would like to see that separate somewhere.
So separate equity
Separate
and.
from
and-
equity.
okay.
But that's my opinion. I don't know how the board members feel. I just think that they are so unique. Our partnerships in this district are so,
But shouldn't they all be working towards what we're working towards with equity?
I do. I just don't know if we should put,
So
because
here-
as we're describing here, strategic partnerships, I'm not sure.
I have a
It
comment.
would go
They're helping
above.
us with those things, though.
Maybe.
They're helping us with achievement
Maybe.
gaps.
What- I
So
don't know what
here's
the
what
bo-
we may
the
do, because
fellow
we
board
talked
members-
about this, is the green arrow is your strategic partnerships. And then you add a sixth bubble that is equity,
So
Okay.
I'm
and
Yep.
put all that together.
I'm going to
That's
challenge,
fine.
I know that Brian and Chris are extremely creative, and you have a very talented cabinet. I'm going to challenge them to maybe look at this from a different perspective other than the arrow, just an idea. I don't really see, when we look at strategic partnerships and equity, I'm going to agree with Jackie. We have strategic partnerships that support our students in many different ways, and not just in the achievement gap and discipline disparity.
Right.
And I want to see myself and my family as being represented in this strategic plan too. We have a lot of families that are very actively involved in their children's education. We have a lot of students that are performing very, very well in our schools, but may not be doing AP or dual enrollment. And sometimes they make choices to do different things. They go to private school, or they go to magnet schools, or they go to, they don't, I choose public school in a very philosophical manner for my children, because I believe it's the best learning environment for them to learn how to grow and be lifelong learners who are able to give back in our world. It's an intentional choice, right? I just want to make sure that we are representative of all of our families. And so I don't really, I don't, achievement gap and discipline disparity are incredibly important, and we recognize it is a glaring problem in our district that we have to address head-on, and we have to make some changes. But I want to also recognize the importance of fostering enrichment opportunities for our students. And I'm not really seeing that here. What I'm seeing is, I see my kids are passing some tests. Are my kids passing tests? Yeah, my kid's gonna pass EOC. They're gonna, but where's the enrichment does that make sense?
Absolutely.
That was the social and emotional component part and the other student successes that I was referring to before.
And it's not even social emotional, it's just,
I think
Opportunities to grow.
what we
Yeah.
could do, and part of that we wanted to catch in the innovation piece, But I think what we could do is separate those two out, have one for equity that dealt with that, because that is a big priority, and then have one strategic partnerships and enrichment.
For innovation.
Where'd you go?
Can I make a comment or two? All right, social emotional, I think definitely goes under culture, climate, and communication. You know, I can see where it weaves throughout this whole thing, but when it gets down to it, you don't want a 48-page document, you want something that you can work with.
Right.
So I think we need to designate where things go.
Right.
I do. I think, you know, it's great to say that it goes in everywhere, but, you know, then it becomes
Right.
very gray.
Right.
And I think we need a more black and white document. I like the stakeholders survey because I think that's important that we're including that. I don't see anywhere in here with A status. And I hate to bring up that big bad thing, but
What do
you
you
know
mean?
what?
You said what?
School grades.
Oh,
School grade or a district.
oh,
with
oh,
an
oh, A
A
status.
You know,
Okay,
I-
got it.
that's the big thing. You know, people come up to you and say, why isn't Indian River County an A district? Yeah, okay, well, we're working towards that. These are the things we're doing to get there. I don't know if we need to put in here A,
Yeah.
but I know those are the things that are going to get us there, if that's what our,
Yeah,
I just want
yeah,
to make that statement. It doesn't need to be written here that it
Yeah.
has to be in.
got it. No, no,
I
but good
do
point,
know-
good
I do
point.
know that that's the intention, is we want to be able to have that status.
Right,
That's an important status for a lot of people.
yeah.
Going back to what Laura said about foundation, if we were going to change this in some way, because we do have the logo of the houses, is there something we could do about using the house idea as the structure for the building blocks? Just if we didn't want to do an arrow.
The arrow looks like the roof of a house.
Right. So if you flipped it and did a wider base and made it look like the schoolhouse, which is
the A
our
at the top.
responsibility,
Yeah.
the schoolhouse, then could
Put
you
the A at the
build
top
off
of
that?
the arrow, the point of the arrow becomes the A.
I'll leave
Oh, I
the
like
creative part
that.
to you.
Yeah.
The
That's a
rest of it, I
nice
didn't comment on this.
visual.
The rest of this, the template that Brian came up with, I think is fantastic.
It is, thank you.
I mean, I know you
Great
you
work.
took it from the other one, but I like it a lot.
What I like also about, just piggybacking, I'm sorry. What I like also about this template here is the inclusion on the key performance indicators. The achievement gap, I see that for each part of them, the indicators for that part are included in there. So I,
Can I
Appreciate
get back to the part of, under culture, climate, 5-star school status? Are we still doing 5-star schools?
Yes.
Okay, so this district is, okay. And under, it's still that big binder that you collect everything in?
I think so, yeah.
And are you aware of what goes in the binder? I do. Very interesting. And who monitors that?
Kristen?
I'm just curious. So we're monitoring that as part of this.
How many of our, just that, since we're on this topic, can Kristen answer, how many of our schools got
I should-
5-star school status last year?
12, how many? This is the second year.
She'll
Okay.
pull it, she'll
It's a
pull
lot.
it.
So we're telling our principals then that this is a priority?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay, 2 points I'd like to make, and then I'll just email you.
sure,
and then,
please.
Going back to what Mrs. Justice was talking about, where in this is there a place for our family? And for me, our family, where our strategic plan really was key in helping us be successful, is the communication and engagement. As a parent, you know, coming in on the board, communication wasn't there, but now I feel like we're at a level that it's just getting better and better. And also the engagement part is very important to me because, you know, I need to know that the doors are open in my kid's classroom for me to come in and, you know, take part and get to know the teachers and be engaged that way. So for me, I really do like the communication
fine.
engagement aspect to it because it's so important.
So we'll keep.
Well, that's just
Focus- no,
my
we'll
opinion.
work on that.
But also, I was looking at, and I like the concept of the excellence in business and innovation. But when I was reading that, the first couple of times I'm reading it, and I'm thinking, excellence in student innovation? Are we going to be teaching business classes? So as I'm reading it, I'm it's a
Yeah, no,
little.
that's your business
And
finance.
it's so interesting you say that, because I thought the same thing. One of the things that we talk about, when people talk about, like, are we a business, why can't school be run like a business? We're not here to make a profit. We're given money, and we're given that money to do the best job possible and to keep the district healthy, but we're not here to make money or to save money. I mean, we're here to save money but we're not here to stockpile it, is the point,
Right.
when I say that. I like to save money, that clip coupon. No one email me.
Somehow, I feel like that, I get the concept and I like it. I think it's something that we need to make a priority. But I'm not really
Right.
What about
crazy about.
focused and innovative use of taxpayer dollars or of community dollars or
What
something,
about
stewardship?
Fiscally responsible, or,
Fiscal accountability,
yeah,
fiscal
or something like
responsibility.
that.
And that's fine, because I think now that we're adding that strategic partners and excellent, or, and enrichment, that innovation would more naturally fall there, and let that just focus on your fiscal. Somewhere in our strategic plan, we never mentioned anything about
Finance.
financing
Oh, we need to.
responsibility.
Yeah, and I don't understand positive adults, business
mean-
rating.
Sorry.
Audits.
Positive audits.
Oh, my gosh.
It helps, but I like that Mr. Fagan's positive.
What did you say?
He's very positive, funny once in a while.
Those are just metrics, again, not, we're not living in anything, but those, like I said, those were the three
Larger
things
check.
that you had the most
See.
publicity about.
About what? I'm sorry.
In
I
the
lost.
finance area, your
Fund
fund balance,
Yeah.
Yeah?
your business ratings, and audits. I mean, those were the three things that I
But that
keep-
may be kind of in the weeds for this document.
Right.
I think you could probably do it in a more overarching way.
These were just your key performance indicators, and maybe those aren't the right key performance indicators.
Dr. Monson.
Yes.
I'm kind of looking, I see staff here, and I see, I see Pam's responsibility here with student success, and I see, Ron's with business, and I see,
Positive adults.
Ben with, high-quality workforce, and you've got culture and climate, and I'm looking over at John Teskey going,
Where does he fit?
Where's the safety in here?
It's in this,
there.
it's in the business, because that's your operations.
so you
That's your,
see where you're going.
that's your 5-year capital plan, that is your safety and security plans.
Yeah.
So he's going to be
That's
working
why-
in with the business
That's
part.
why you may want to say, business and operations,
But should,
fiscal responsibility and
reason-
I don't know.
The reason why I bring this up is because I think when we're all done, said and done with this document, we're tying in evaluations at the end to this document. So when you're looking at that and you're saying, okay, if I'm in your shoes or I'm in your shoes, I'm gonna look at it and go, okay, where's the clear vision for me? And I see that clear vision now in here. So I wanted to make sure that we had that clear vision.
And I just want to add on to that, because, again, this is just me and my philosophy, and I'm just, somebody else may have a different opinion, but when I look at this, and I'm going to use Mr. Teskey as an example, his division, they should have a metric in their division that supports student success in the strategic plan.
Absolutely.
All the way around, all of those. So even though they're going to have more in the operations piece, but they should have something that attaches that they're working with the high-quality workforce. They should have something that has to do with climate, culture, and or community
I
and
think
engagement. Yeah,
another point I wanted to make is I want to see safety in here.
yeah.
I think it's important, we talk about it all the time. We can't talk about a lot of it, but I think it's important that we have it as one of our key visions, that we keep a safe environment for our students and our staff.
Okay.
Mara's been waiting so patiently.
Just real quick, Kristen checked, and we have 18 five-star schools.
18. I mean, we're on the right track.
And I know we've
We
gone
had
way over
0.
our time, and Dr. Schiff needs to speak.
Yeah, I agree with the safety part. I would like to see something on that. I think we should talk through the degree to which that's also part of culture and climate, and how we make safety and security, in addition to John's, Mr. Teskey's role around target hardening, but that's also part of climate and culture and security, but that there be a specific piece on safety and security, I agree with. Secondly, the strategic partnerships and equity that we now are talking about, strategic partnerships and
Enrichment.
enrichment, could we then break out I would like to see equity, and I'd like it to see a separate category called diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Yeah.
And potentially diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. Those are terms that are
Diversity,
commonly being used now
equity.
that we could get aligned with and in front of as a district.
Can I get the, make sure I,
diversity, equity, inclusion,
and accessibility.
Accessibility, DEI or DEIA is commonly being used now.
Okay.
And I'd like to see that as its own
Right,
event.
right. I said split out equity, but we'll entitle it the way you did.
Further to Terry's point, I was interested to see who you had at the table today. I like, I've said before, I've like been on committees before, and sometimes, you know, people start talking, like some of us have education backgrounds, some of us have business backgrounds, none of us can do anyone else's job right here, right now. I was curious to see who you had around the table. I'd almost like to see your cabinet at the table when we discuss strategic planning. Because I think that Ben brings some things that would be interesting to hear. I think John has experience as a district leader in this school system, as an administrator in the school system. I think he brings some interesting ideas. Mr. Fagan, I don't know how you feel about, no, I just think,
Without question.
I'd like to have them here so that if they have something they want to add, I want to hear, I don't want you guys to feel like I want you to jump in and tell us stuff.
We're gonna have a
That's
big
right.
table.
That's all
That's
right,
okay.
though. I mean, it's not that many more people.
That's
I just feel
okay.
like they're
I
over there,
totally
but there's been
agree.
a couple
Fine, we'll take care
times
of
where
it.
I've,
We'll take care of it.
Yeah, because
I
I'm
mean,
looking over there
I didn't
thinking, okay,
exclude
they-
them.
They are,
no, I
By
know.
that, we will add them to the table. That's not a problem.
I just think I think it's just in general, even for a new
suggestion.
superintendent coming in, to know that it's not just that one leader, but we know that it's your cabinet, that you work together.
Absolutely. Mhm. Yep, not a problem.
This is great. Thank you, Dr.
We're
Moxley.
closing this topic.
Yep.
Unless there's other comments.
Nope. And we're gonna
Take a
come
break.
back, 9 minutes. Okay,
How long?
9 minutes.
9 minutes.
Then we're going to go into your question.
9 or 10?
9.
9. Sorry, I can't hear.
are calling this back to order at 11:28, and at this time, Dr. Moxley?
Yes, this particular item was added as a result of our discussion Tuesday night at the board meeting, and Mrs. Berenborg brought this up, and you have a copy of the framing question that she referenced, and I'm not sure how you want to proceed with this question
Can
and
I-
how you want to answer.
Can I make a statement? I guess the reason why I brought this up is because I know when we have HYA here, our time's very valuable with them, and we only have so much time that we have budgeted for with them. And to keep that succinct, I think it would be important for us that, we get into these philosophical conversations about, how we feel, and there's 5 of us that have probably differing opinions about what we're looking for, but I think it's good to air kind of some conversation before they come. Not that we want to make decisions before they come. I think it's more of a, there are 2 thoughts in mind that I had about, let's have a discussion about, and maybe if we can just keep to these 2 thoughts, so that when they're here, we already have that talked about. And that is, how do we come to consensus on this decision as a team? And then how are we going to consider all the stakeholders? Because, we have all these different groups and partnerships and kids to think about, teachers to think about, employees to think about, that we want to make sure that, we're making the best decision. So with the framing question is basically, how can we select the best superintendent so that we have those 2 thoughts in mind? And sometimes we get off on a tangent and have these long discussions about, philosophical beliefs about these things, and I can see that this could happen. I just want to make sure when HYA is here that we're sticking to that point, and because it could be, I saw the last time how it went, and I'm just afraid that we're not going to get everything we need to get done. So I think these 2 things would be great to hash out before we do that.
So what we're going to do is we're going to go around and have each person speak briefly, and then let's try to get around and not, let's just try to utilize the time a little bit more if equitable.
Okay.
So go ahead.
So how do we come to consensus? I thought it was interesting, the last time we were a much more disjointed board, but we did actually come to consensus fairly well. And I didn't feel it was as organized a process as I would like had at that point, but we did okay.
Yeah, we did great.
All right. We'll keep you for
I'll
now.
I'll do.
But I think that's important. I liked the SWOT idea that you brought up. I really thought that was an interesting way to look at it, especially because, to be honest with you, I've given this a lot of thought. I don't necessarily know what I'm looking for. I'm hoping that, and I'm hopeful that we may get somebody that I didn't even expect. Does that make, so I have a really open mind to the candidates.
But
So
that's what I want to hear.
Right, so I have a really open mind to the candidates. There are a few things that I have recognized that I see have been valuable in other leaders that we've had in general, like being a principal at some point. That's just an example. For me, I've seen Dr. Moxley draw on that experience. I've seen Dr. Rendell draw on that experience, and it seems to have been it's an interesting foundational piece that I might look for or might be attracted to. But just in general, I'm pretty open-minded. I like the SWOT idea because the SWOT idea to me allows for that open-mindedness. Does that, it's a very technical way to go about analyzing, and it would put everybody kind of in the same, it would allow you to get some snapshots of the individuals. But again, I come at this very, as far as how do we consider stakeholders, I hope that HYA brings that information, but I come at it from with a very open mind to candidates, and to considering someone that maybe we didn't even know existed. So.
I agree. At the same time as I have an open mind, I'm also clear that if I don't see somebody who wows me and who I feel like wows enough of the board, I'm willing to say no, actually, in this. I am really unwilling to not get the right person. I know that was a double negative.
You don't want to settle.
It's beyond settling. It's like I don't have the luxury of not getting somebody really excellent for this position, and I'm not willing to compromise on that. I think that's happened in the past. Anyway, all that doesn't matter. For me, I am heartened, excuse me, by the way in which we did that process when we got Dr. Moxley. I think we did a good job, and I think it was one of the first examples of us coming together effectively as a board. So I'm heartened and encouraged by that, and believe that we can do that again. For me, and I know what I personally know what I'm looking for. We can discuss that. You know, I don't know in what framework we want to discuss that and if we want to come to consensus on that. I'm looking for somebody with leadership experience. I'm looking for somebody who has a strong track record of building culture and climate and relationships. I'm looking for somebody who has been a leader in a district either comparable to ours or larger than ours. Ideally, but not exclusively, I want superintendent experience, but when I say superintendent experience, I want a district that either looks like ours, or I don't want a superintendent in some of the small districts where it's one high school and one middle school. I want something comparable to what we know to be a superintendent. I'm looking for somebody who interacts with me with integrity, truthfully, and respectfully. And I will see that both in public spaces, and we haven't finished discussing whether we'll have private meetings. For me, having those private meetings is not about taking something out of the public eye. I want to be very clear going in how somebody interacts with me in front of the cameras and not in front of the cameras. That's not a mistake I'm willing to make after the decision is done. I want somebody who demonstrates attention to issues that are important to me. I want somebody with experience and attention to equity issues. I want somebody with experience and attention to broadly framed security questions and not safety and security and not just target hardening, but understand how the whole context of culture and climate feeds into that. I want to see their experience in how they've built that in the past. I want to, when we get that far, I want to hear from other people who have worked with them, how that process has gone, not just the people they tell me to check with, but I want us to have clear agreement and consensus about how and when in the process we're going to do that. Should I keep going? Sure. Should I keep going?
Well, maybe let Jackie go. I mean, I'm not the chair, but that's okay.
Yeah, but I mean to
Yeah,
how
I
we
didn't start
reach
listing mine,
consensus.
but-
Yeah, neither, and I wasn't going
Yeah.
to, but I'm not unclear about this, and maybe because I'm not unclear about it as an individual is different than how that is as a group moving forward in consensus. But I feel like our process with Dr. Moxley, the process with Dr. Moxley taught me a lot. The experience over the last however many months it's been with Dr. Moxley has taught me a lot. Due in no small measure to Dr. Moxley's leadership, that has helped me have a much clearer sense of what I'm looking for. And I'm grateful for her help in this process because I think she has an eye towards things in ways that we have not yet experienced as a board. So for me, to be honest, I'm not worried about our consensus coming on a superintendent. I'm more, what I would like us to be clear about is the process and the agreements about how we're going to do that moving forward, what we all agree to in what we will and won't do in that process, and how we will present ourselves publicly and with any potential candidate.
Okay.
That's a start. That's my start.
I think I just kind of lost track of what we were talking about. Are we talking now about creating a framing question, or are we just, what are we looking for in a superintendent?
We don't need to create a framing question.
No,
What are we talking about
I
right now?
gave you one just to start the topic.
So we're just starting the topic on what?
The 2 points that I brought up, which is how to come to consensus, and you made a good point about what we agreed to in the process. I like that. And also considering all stakeholders.
What about the SWOT?
Yeah.
Are you
If I
comfortable
can go back for a second, I agree with that, and what I think would be helpful, either we have to create a time to do that together, or we have to do it individually and create a time to come back and talk about it.
Yes.
Both things are valuable in different ways. I also think it's important, like we did with Dr. Moxley, FSBA gave us a sheet, but we, some of us used it, some of us didn't. I created my own spreadsheet, which I didn't share with others, but would have before it was filled out. I think we have to have consensus on how we're going to evaluate somebody coming in.
Thank you, because that's exactly what my point is I think we need to look at the factors that we want to consider.
And I think that's something that I am looking for HYA to bring to us, is what, and Dr. Moxley and I have talked about this, what are the frameworks that they've used for that in the past, and we will either use those or we'll create our own, and that's part of what I anticipate coming out of our decision when we meet together. But I know for me, I've been through hiring processes a number of times, and if I don't like theirs, I'm going to create my own spreadsheet with what I think is important that matters to me moving forward for a superintendent.
Our coffee's working.
Yeah, right?
Put a little espresso in me.
Okay.
Yeah, touche.
Mrs. Rosario.
You were sleeping before, now you're awake.
That's funny, I've only had that much.
So, I know what I want to say, but before I say what I want to say, I need a little bit of reminder and feedback on the SWOT. I know in my head what I'm thinking, but what are you thinking when we're talking this SWOT idea? What are we talking about?
I'll defer to
So
you
a
since you
SWOT,
brought it up.
what it looks like is you basically create 4 parts like this. And you've got strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats.
Okay.
And in each category, you write, what do you think are, and we can make a decision about what do we either talk about this from the perspective of an individual candidate, but more specifically in this, I think it's about the district. What are the strengths of the district? What are the weaknesses of the district? What are the opportunities? What are the threats? And how do those things potentially help us decide who best fits for our district, given these considerations?
Okay.
And I've used that for candidate analysis too, for hiring
Yeah.
analysis, which I found helpful. I think as a group collectively, that can be used in analyzing candidates to move to the finalist level.
Can I add something to that? There's something I also use called a grid, yeah, right? Wait till I get to the rest of the cup. A grid analysis, and I do that sometimes in personal decision-making. But I identify what are the characteristics, what are the things that are, let's say, for example, I did this when I was choosing a school for my son. And I listed what are the things that are important to me about a school. And then I gave them a ranking of, say, 1 to 5. How much does this matter to me? And then I added it all up, and something would come out, it would come out with a score. Sometimes the score surprised me. Sometimes I realized in doing the score that it didn't actually reflect how I felt, and that I had either overweighted or underweighted something, or weighted things equally that were not equal in my mind. That type of analysis has also helped me that could be valuable in something like this.
So I think based on the last experience with our only experience with FSBA in selecting Dr. Moxley, their spreadsheet was incredibly helpful. Their Excel spreadsheet where we checked off.
I disagree.
So
I do.
for me, it was incredibly helpful. Yes, because basically, I did not use that solely. Of course, I read every single resume that came in and every single cover letter that came in. But of those that I kind of tiered down, I was able to just categorize who had these qualities and who had these qualities and who had these qualities. So it was helpful for me in terms of organizing all of these resumes that came in addition to reading the resume and the cover letter, and then, of course, doing research on them. So I'm not discounting that along the process. I'm just saying that helped. It helped me, especially since it was my first time selecting a superintendent. It also, with that in mind, I've never used the SWOT. I've used other forms of that kind of strategy for hiring, but I'm certainly open to that if the question is, do we want something of that sort, absolutely, why not? If it helps us to wrap our head around how are we going to identify for ourselves our own strengths, and then look for a candidate who can also fit within whatever we need for our strengths and our weaknesses and address these opportunities, and so on and so forth. As far as a candidate is concerned, as far as a framing question or something along those lines, because I'm looking at the question that Terry wrote, I'm assuming Terry wrote this: how can we select the best superintendent for Indian River in such a way that the decision is reached in consensus with the board members? I think that we should definitely look at one of these two, or both, or any. I'm open to hear if there is anything else out there. I don't know. I've never gone through the superintendent selection process, so I'll be as open to say that this is as novice, even if it's my second time, it's still a novice process for me. I've hired and let go of several people in my career, in my professional career, but I was the supervisor. And I was hiring either a coordinator or a teacher. It wasn't a superintendent. So when I say novice, I mean novice in terms of hiring a superintendent. What I'm looking for in a superintendent is Dr. Moxley. I've said that before, and I know that she's incredibly humble, but all of the qualities and characteristics that Dr. Moxley brings to the table are exactly what we need here in this district. I respect Dr. Moxley's choice and decision because she has, I guess, her own, life outside of the district. It's unfortunate that she won't be able to stay with us. I would love for her to be with us forever because she is truly the perfect match for us. But she is also chosen for a time such as this to be the person to help us heal in some of the ways that we needed before a new superintendent came in. I was going to say a real superintendent, but that wasn't right. You are permanent superintendent. That's what I meant.
Yeah.
And so Dr. Moxley is not a Band-Aid fix. Dr. Moxley has chosen this position to help us in this transition and to get us on the right track. Starting, for example, with the strategic plan that we did today, the question that was asked earlier, that some might say, Mrs. Justice mentioned it, I've been asked too, why not wait for the new superintendent? But this is way long overdue, and this needed to be done. Even Dr. Rendell mentioned that we needed to get started with this at the beginning of last summer, this summer that just passed. So irregardless, it is what it is, and we need to get started on it. So I am looking, as I mentioned, for a person with the humble characteristics and experience in education, someone with leadership experience, someone with financial fiscal responsibility, someone who has the ability to communicate, but more than just a communicator, I want a listener. I want someone who's going to take the time to hear the stakeholders that will sit before them and to consider what is being said. Because we can have a leader who will listen and do nothing about it. We need someone who's willing to be to roll up their sleeves and get their hands dirty. I don't want a paper pusher. I don't want someone to delegate, although that is very important. That is not something that needs to be dismissed. But I want someone who's also willing to do the work it takes as a team. When we talk about team, the superintendent is the head of that team and needs to be the example for those they are leading. So the perfect description of a leader is when someone can look behind you. If a leader looks behind them, who's following? That's how you know that there is leadership qualities in a leader that is worth. If you are a leader and there is no one following you, willing to follow you and willing to buy into the vision and the mission that we have already created and that we're creating now, then that's not a leader that we need for our district. I also believe that someone who comes into this position needs to come in as a problem solver, as well as an innovator. So that person does not need to solve all of our problems, but when we sit, I don't know how it works with you all, but when I sit with Dr. Moxley and there's a concern of mine, almost immediately, all the time, almost all the time, Dr. Moxley says, okay, this is what I hear, this is what I think, and here are some almost immediate opportunities for us to start looking at these ways of solving these problems, right? Or this problem that we're talking about. And that kind of quality is going to be very, very difficult for us to maybe pinpoint in an interview. I mean, we only have a few hours with the person. So I think that moving into the process, we did talk, in addition to all of these other things, we did talk about the opportunity of having one-on-one. I think that should be a part of the equation in selecting, because there is a different persona and different information that we gather as a group, but there's certainly imperative information that you can get from a person one-on-one. Eye contact, communication, obviously, verbiage, body language, all other kinds of things can be collected when you're in one-on-one. So I think that ought to play a part in this. I also want someone with equity. Obviously, we keep talking about equity and the attention to details. But I want someone also who's going to grab hold of our strategic plan, and I'd like for this to be one of our questions at some point, somewhere along the line. What are you going to do with our strategic plan to encourage and to teach, model, and express to all of our stakeholders, principals, assistant principals, parents, department managers? How are you going to use this document as a guide to everyone, or express to everyone that this ought to be the guide that drives our vision and our mission? So I think overarching, that needs to be, if we're going to come up with a framing question, this document that we are creating is supposed to encompass and summarize all of our values, our goals, obviously our strategic plan. So how can our superintendent take this and essentially run with it? I think I kind of answered some of the questions maybe in part in places, but I hope I did.
Okay, so I do agree as well. Analysis by candidate and their strengths, weaknesses, and all that. The reason why I wanted to talk about this is to kind of get this out so that when we're to the nitty-gritty, we can really concentrate on what, we all kind of have in mind. I agree, principal, leadership opportunities, that person has to have been in that seat. I think not just for their reason, but for the people that are following them. If I'm a principal, I'm going to look at that leader and say, have you been where I've been? Do you know what I'm dealing with? Do you understand what's going on at my school? So I think that's important. So that track record is important. Respectful in front of and behind cameras, I thought was a really good point. They have to be a great communicator that is genuine. There's a person that can speak, and you've seen politicians that know how to communicate and everything, but, again, you're pointing at Dr. Moxley. Yes, I know when she's telling me, she's real honest, and I think that's a really good key indicator for me is a communicator that's honest and genuine. And that's hard to get in a quick interview, so you've really got to do your research. The equity awareness of our issues, I think, is extremely important. But along with that is a person that can solve the problems through, and the word I keep bringing up too is innovator. That person has to come up with some new ideas or ideas that are creative and done elsewhere that have been proven. Proven track record. This works. Not just, let's try this. Let's throw it at the wall. But, you know, I've done this somewhere else. I know it works. I think it can work here. I want somebody that's creative with finances, that says, this is where the money is, and we need to do this. This is where I think it can be. And working with us to think about ways that you can use your buckets of money. Because I've been there when you're in a school and you're trying to solve a problem and you're sitting there going, you know, what should I do? What should I do? Well, sometimes, you know, should I get people or should I get things? You know, that's what it comes down to. So I think that's a person that I think we need to look at, that is how creative they are with their finances. And then you mentioned that they get in there. I think it's a person that gets in the trenches. They're in the schools, the people know them. They're not just a figurehead at the White Castle. I've heard that comment when I go out to schools. Oh, they're just in the White Castle. So I think, you know, that's important that they know that that's a person that when they come through, they can actually speak to, and it will speak to them. When they walk down the hall, they're friendly. They know what's going on. And that's a tough thing for this person to be all that. But I think that they'll develop that part. But again, having that personality that's genuine and honest, that'll come along with it. But I think what we agree to in the process is extremely important. And that's the point at which I was trying to bring with this, is that, and I wrote it down like this, and I know it sounds funny, but we agree to what we decide with HYA, i.e. calling references. If we agree with HYA that these are the things we're going to do, we all have to agree that those are the things we're going to do. Mm-hmm. And we have to stick to that. And to me, if we all are getting this out now, and we're all saying, you know, I agree with you on these points, I understand where you're coming from, I get what you're saying, I'm going to keep that in mind, that when I do this, I'm going to agree that if they say, okay, we should do this, yeah, we all agree, we're going to do that, I'm going to follow that. And if we shouldn't do that, I'm going to agree with that, and I'm not going to do that.
I know you need to speak, but I wanted to comment on that if she'd be
In a minute, when she's done.
I'm done.
Okay. Come up to the mic.
I think it was a miracle, honestly, that we got where we wanted to go from this, just because there were so many candidates and it was so wide open. And when I reflect back to the 3 different people that we could have chosen, and I look at the SWOT analysis and how I analyze them, you know, I think we got very, very lucky. Gut plays a big part in decision-making, instinct, right, and meeting someone, and that one-on-one can help with that. When I say open-minded, and you ask the question, how do we come to consensus? We recognize in the past that together we don't always agree on everything. But my open-mindedness is is how, and I think if we're all open-minded, that is how we will come to consensus. Is listening to your concern, you listening to my concern. If there's a certain concern with, I'll give a specific example so I can not be so broad. When we were interviewing for interim, Janelle came from St. Lucie, and I recognized that even though I thought she would be capable of doing the job, she had some baggage with having worked with Mark Rendell before, and I thought that would be a threat, right? That was a threat to her ability to be successful. Do I think she could have done the job? I do. I think she's a very competent woman who would have done a good job, but that was a threat, so that kind of took her out of the running for me when we did So I recognize that even though I wouldn't necessarily have a problem with that, because they worked together well, and I had respect for Mark and the work that he did, not everyone felt the same way. So that open-mindedness will help us to come to consensus, I think. And I think I feel fairly good coming into it. I appreciate your helping to streamline us, but I feel pretty good coming into it because I think we're all kind of on the same page with, we recognize each of us have some areas where we have some concerns or we have some focus. And I think it's going to be an interesting experience. I think what I'd ask of the fellow board members is that everyone comes into it as open-minded, you know, and kind of willing to, you know, to be honest and respectful of each other's feelings. But, you know, I hope that it's going to be an interesting experience.
Was it
It's kind of your turn.
related to that?
It's brief.
Okay.
I think it's really critically important that when we get to that point, that we're not split, that we're really clear that we can agree on whoever that person is. I think it is a detriment to the district, to that person, and to us as a board if we're a 3-2 split in that decision. If we can't get to that point, then it's not the right person for us, and I think we need to be cognizant of that.
That's why I framed the question the way I did.
Yeah, and I
I'll
don't.
come to consensus.
That doesn't mean that we have to compromise on what matters to us or our values or integrity in the process. But I do think it matters that it be someone moving forward who comes into, who does not come into a house divided. It matters for their leadership moving forward. And that to me is a very big concern.
I'd like to make a comment on something that, and I don't know, I don't think you proposed it this way, but I just want to make sure I understand. So, in speaking, you had mentioned us taking what Hazard Young's recommends, and then we do what Hazard Young?
No.
Okay.
What I'm saying is what we agree to, what they recommend, and then we agree to in that meeting, we
Okay.
all agree to
Okay.
it.
Because I know, I just wanted to clarify that, because I know there's been some times that we haven't all agreed to everything that they've suggested, and I don't want to just let them.
No, I'm not saying we
Okay.
agree to all their suggestions.
No, but specifically, when they said something about, they're a recruiting firm. They work with candidates all the time, and they've been doing a lot of work behind the scenes, I hope, and I hope we will see, in recruiting candidates, targeting and recruiting candidates, and then bringing candidates to us that they feel, I think this comes into the, how do you consider stakeholders? The purpose of what they went through, the exercise they went through in the week of meeting with stakeholders was so that they could inform their decision-making process, so they brought people, right? I think that one of the examples would be, and if I remember correctly, they spoke a little bit about, this is about references specifically, and they said it kind of turns people off if you do this here rather than here, or it's something that we don't necessarily recommend doing. I just want to make sure we listen to that, because while we've not recruited for superintendents before, they certainly have. And so I hope through that process that, is that what you mean? when
That's
we
exactly
discuss
what I'm
that?
talking
Okay.
about.
Okay, so, let me,
Wait,
I
I
have,
have some.
I have
this is
not
about-
had any time to
Oh, I'm
speak, so
sorry, I
let
thought
me
you were done.
speak.
Yeah.
I'm trying
Go
to give everyone their time, but in the process, I'm going to just highlight some things that I did like about when we had the search during the interim. I did like, and I'm expecting Hazard Young to help us be very organized, because that's why we hired them, is for their professionalism. I did like how we had the candidate interview questions, and we went around and each person had an area, and then they got to choose what questions to ask from that. I felt that was very organized. I liked and I want to know why you guys didn't like this, because for me, I thought it was very fair and efficient, but I'm hearing now that two didn't like it, and I want to know why, because I want to see the other side to this.
You want me to go?
Yeah,
Go ahead. No,
yeah.
go ahead.
Oh, I just thought it was a crapshoot. I thought there was a chance it could have gone really, really, if not everyone, I didn't really know everyone as well as I do now, but in any type of a time, if you came together with a group of people that you really don't know that well and you're doing that, there's a chance that we didn't even interview Ms. Susan, because it could have been that she was one vote shy of it's just an easy way to miss good people sometimes, especially with as many resumes that we looked at and the varying levels of experience of looking at resumes and what you're looking for. So that, to me, was why I had a concern with it. I
Okay,
just
we're
felt,
gonna go around here because I really liked this. I felt that it was very fair, and I think the results of it, when I look at number 35, got all five of us.
yeah, but there were some that were like delivery drivers for Pizza Hut on there.
Well, and we didn't,
that's
I'm
why
just,
they didn't-
seriously.
Yeah,
you know,
why
I
but
didn't
usually
want
those
to-
kind of fall, and you're
And-
dealing with your top.
but, I mean, I thought it was very fair, because what I felt with it was, I'm gonna put my selection down, and I'm not gonna have any bias to what, Mrs. Rosario, who she liked, or who you
But I
liked.
kind of want to have bias. I kind of want to hear.
Well, and that's
Well, you
after
do
we.
after, yeah.
After. So I thought it was very fair and organized, and I felt like it really got us through the process really quick.
Do you not think that HYA is going to have some type of a
I don't know.
system for drawing? I think they will.
I will find out. I
Yeah.
just have not been able to connect with them, and that was on my list this afternoon to have a
Well,
follow-up
here's my
conversation.
concern, is I know that they're gonna bring to us their 5 recommendations. I wanna hear who their 5 recommendations are, but I also want, our recommendations are just as valid. Did you get to speak? I can't remember. I wanna.
When?
Okay, go
Why
ahead.
we didn't like
Well,
it.
About
I'm
this,
busting at
about
the
this
seams.
chart.
Okay,
No.
she's, okay.
I'm busting
Okay,
at
I
the
don't want you to
seams.
bust, so go.
I respect the work that HYA does. It is that this is, the recruiting is their work. We hire them for that. But their recommendations are only recommendations. I do not want us to forfeit our right to sort through candidates in our way for our district. At the end of the day, when all of this is over, HYA goes home, we're the ones who ultimately live with the decision that we make. The decision for superintendent is ours, not HYA's. They will narrow down based on the characteristics that we have thus far given them. But once they come in with those resumes, it's our decision. Just because they've had the experience in the process, doesn't mean they get to tell us who they think should be our superintendent. I think we need to remember that the final decision is ours. We accept and we understand that they have done this for a long time, but they don't live with us day in and day out. They don't know our demographic, they don't know our population, they don't really know our strengths, our weaknesses, our opportunities, and our threats. They have an idea, but they don't live it out on a daily basis. We do. And I just want us to be able to say that, thank you very much. We're going to look at the 20 candidates that you give us, or however many it will be. But now it's our turn. I do not want to be swayed by their opinion of what they think, and I certainly do not want us to hand them the baton and say, who do you think should be our superintendent? No, I want us to be able.
I don't think they're gonna do that.
I know, I'm just making a point because I'm busting at the seams wanting to say that. The superintendent selection is the ultimate decision of the board members that are sitting at this round table, right, or whatever this is right now. At some point later on, before we end, if we can just talk about when we're gonna talk salary. I don't know when that happens to determine
That would
that, not
be-
for this
yeah.
conversation, but
Yeah.
just throwing that out
That's when you get
there.
into negotiating.
With regard to the chart, it may not be, it was an option for us from FSBA. FSBA did not say, go ahead and do this, all of you. It was a suggested tool to help us through it. If you're not comfortable with it, by all means, don't do it, but I found it incredibly helpful. And then, once you get through that chart thing, then we can talk about, well, these were my highest top 3, like we did with FSB. These are my highest top 5 or my highest top 10. Now let's talk in detail about each candidate that are our highest, because we've come to consensus about who we all said, Dr. Moxley is all of our highest candidates. So, this is how we got there. Again, I'm open, but I certainly believe that that was a helpful tool.
As far as the chart goes, I felt like it was a little limiting for me because I felt like, oh, we're only going to go with the popularity because we all starred certain ones. Those are the only ones we talked about. Whereas there might have been one over here that I found something out about that none of the others didn't, I don't know if they knew about, and that I would have liked to have shared, but we didn't have the time to discuss it at that point. So I think that be careful with that because we might limit ourselves.
And I do agree that, because there was a candidate that I thought was a spectacular candidate. That I was the only one checked box, who, you know, in those type of situations, I think we need to be,
Sure.
we have to
And
be
I
open to
probably looked at that
discussing.
same candidate, I'm not sure which one, but I probably looked at that same candidate and did more research and found something you might not have known that bothered me. So
Actually,
that's,
you know what? I think that candidate, it was you and I that had,
but,
I did research and found something, no.
yeah,
No,
but,
you
but
and
my
I
point, but my point is, that's
selected
why we
that.
can't limit to that
Right,
sheet.
right.
Because, yes, you might have found out something that was outstanding about this person, or I might have found out something that, oh, you know, I had reservations about. Again, we have to be very careful about what we read that's out there.
That's why calling references is important.
I agree with that, but I also want us to stick to the rules on that, because I think we could get ourselves in big trouble if we
Yes.
don't.
I do
What
too.
are the rules?
There are rules to that.
Yeah, I
Okay,
mean, a
but
good
what are they?
recruiting
Let's
firm
talk
is gonna-
about it. This is a great opportunity.
I think when HYA is with us, they'll let us know that these are things you really should do, and these are really things you shouldn't do. And I think at that point, we can discuss it, and we can say, I agree, we shouldn't do this. Do we all agree to that? And I think
Can
that,
we have them call the references?
yeah.
No,
Jump in.
no,
Oh, they
because
will.
they
They
might
will.
not
They
ask,
will anyways.
they might not ask the questions that we know to ask.
We're gonna ask those questions in our interview.
No, of the references. You ask very different questions of references than you do to the candidate.
Yeah, I gotta be careful though, Jackie. I mean,
I'm okay with being careful, I accept that. I'm just saying, those are very different. And then as you're talking with a reference, if you've ever gone through that hiring process, you know, you ask one question and then it jars another question, then you get
Dr. Moxley
further on
has
down the.
something, and then
So just to
Dr.
talk
Schiff.
about the references, as part of their recruitment process, when they come with their slate, that is just a talking point for you, it's not, you have to do this, they will have checked a certain level of references on everybody. So I want you to know they will have done a certain level of that. And remember, in part of your process, you did say you wanted to do that full scope of background referencing on either the candidate or the top two candidate. I don't know that you narrowed it to one or the top two. That's a point of discussion. But we did budget for that, and they have that checked off, that we're going to do that real deep dive. Now, if you're going to do additional on your own, that's another point, but they will do some of it to a certain level, just so you know that.
Dr. Schiff, do you
Uh,
have something that you would like to
Busting
add to
with
this
this
conversation?
On that sheet, when you referred to that sheet,
Uh-huh.
I didn't have a problem with that sheet, did think it was helpful. I thought you were talking about something different, which was there was a sheet prior to that on ranking characteristics. They had a sheet on that I had mixed feelings about. I did my own.
I remember that.
I'm used to, when I've done these kinds of decisions in the past, having a spreadsheet on all of the things that are important to me, having the list of candidates, and then checking off if they have those characteristics.
We did that.
What
too.
I'm hearing is,
Can I
oh
finish?
yeah, I'm sorry.
And I've been waiting.
No, you have. You are right.
And so so that kind of sheet, whether we have one that we all agree to use or we make up our own, that is a conversation we haven't had.
Pass it
That is not it.
Okay.
They had a whole sheet, they had a whole thing, and it was characteristics. I didn't love theirs, because there were things that were important to me that were not on theirs. And I will do that again for myself here. I'm happy to share what I do, or if there's a time for us to have a conversation so that there's a sheet we all agree with, or I'm happy to do that, give it to Dr. Moxley for
Share it
her
with
to
us.
tweak and share with everybody else.
Share it.
I'm not
Have
done yet.
Nancy.
And, you're just gonna have to wait.
That one?
And, yes.
Okay. See, I can't even read the writing.
Yeah, like that wasn't, that didn't have it,
Positive
and it wasn't helpful to have it in this format. I needed it in a spreadsheet.
I'm
Because
used to, you have the characteristics down here, you have the number of the
Yes.
applicants here, and you can go
Yeah.
through and
I could have,
check, check, check.
yeah, I did it a little differently,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
that's kind of moot at this
Yeah.
point. But the degree to which those I think part of what I hear Terry asking for is some not only consensus on those characteristics, because we may vary, but some general consensus on those characteristics. The other thing about that I wasn't against that, but what it didn't allow was for ranking. Because when you just check off the 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, they're all weighted equally unless we're assigning them weights, right? Like, somebody may be on my top 5,
Okay.
but they're actually number 4, they're not number 1, and they shouldn't have the weight of a number 1. And we may want to consider that. Just because 5 of us put somebody on our list doesn't mean that we think equally of them. It just means they're in the top 5.
So that is a very good point. So we should come prepared and have a spreadsheet and put the numbers, and then we add them up, and then that will help us.
But what I think might be helpful is if we see what HYA is going to bring. What I'm hearing is that we
I'm
need
going to call this afternoon.
Thank you.
Well,
But-
and
Could they maybe send it to us ahead of time?
Yes, I'm going to
Okay.
ask for that,
Yeah.
I think that'll help.
Ahead of time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To Mrs.
like the
well,
beginning of the
kind of
week.
to everybody's point, on yes, we hired them because of their experience in the process, and yes, we want to honor that. One of the things that FSBA did exceptionally well was they didn't tout their experience. They worked with, they were masterful at working with, to bring us together they were impeccable about this. They brought, it was the first decision that we did really well in consensus as a board. That was not by accident. That was because of how they shepherded us through the process.
And
I'm
I might
gonna
disagree.
finish if it kills me.
I disagree with you.
Okay. But what they did was they interacted and worked with us in ways that helped us get there. That's what I'm looking for HYA. I'm not, to Mrs. Rosario's point, I'm not looking for them to tell me what to do because they know and I don't. I'm looking for them to support the 5 of us, 6 if we include Dr. Moxley, in how we get to that point. And I do believe that it is my job to question that, to have consideration about that, to come at them and say, I don't understand, could you explain? Or I disagree with this, have a conversation with me about why you think your way and I think my way. I want engagement and interaction. I want to trust their expertise. But I also want to honor what Mrs. Rosario said is we live in this community. This is not the easiest community. I think we all know and have experienced that. And so we live with that decision. And I want us to be, I know that we are responsible for that. But I think that's a dance we play with them, that neither they nor we abdicate responsibility in how that dance goes. So, okay, now I'm done.
Who's the leader in the dance? I'm just curious.
There is no leader. There is no leader. We dance together.
So that's the thing.
Yeah.
That was my thing with FSBA on the last search. Is the reason why I didn't want to work with them on this search. I felt like the way that they entered into it, I was uncomfortable with. Some of the way they handled things, I was uncomfortable with. I think Dr. Moxley was a happy accident. I think she was on there. I do. I think she was on, that's just my personal opinion. It's the reason why I didn't want to work with FSBA.
totally
Again, I
disagree.
feel like they inspector gadgeted, which is what we'd say in my family, their way to where we ended up because it could have gone in a totally different direction. I think Dr. Moxley has been a healer, has brought us to this place. I do feel it was our decision as a board. I don't know how much of a part, either they were geniuses or they really played very little part in how it ended up.
They were, I don't know how much I can say. It was
No,
so
I
not
understand.
by accident.
I understand, but
yeah.
that would play to a foregone conclusion, so, which isn't good either. So, that's my
wasn't
personal opinion, I'm allowed to have an opinion. But that's neither here nor there. I think what I'm saying is that we have not worked with HYA before. I have worked in the world of recruiting. I was a recruiter. I was trained as a recruiter. I have looked at a lot of resumes, and I have been on both sides of sales and in recruiting in this industry. So I'm curious to see what evaluative tools they bring to the table. I would imagine that they will be bringing some evaluative tools. Will we love them? Maybe we'll think they're fantastic. Maybe you'll still do your own. I was not saying that they should make the decision for us. However,
I did not think it was in the best interest of this board to have collected the resumes and reviewed the resumes in the way that we did last time. I thought it was counterproductive to consensus to have 40-plus resumes. I just, it's not how I've seen things work in the past when you're hiring for a high-level executive. When we would bring candidates, we would bring a structured, vetted pool of candidates that we had either recruited specifically for the position or that we had advertised and then vetted that candidate through referencing and interviews. And that's what you pay for. So I just want to be cognizant of the fact that we have paid for a service that we should take advantage of. And hopefully on the 6th, my hope is that it's just a very, and this is the last thing I'll say, I hope it is a very structured process. And I have faith that that Mrs. Zork, as the chair of the board, is going to help to structure that process. I think you've done a good job thus far. I think today was a positive, productive day, and I'm optimistic, and I'm open-minded.
That's good. I appreciate that.
Lot of
Dr.
O's.
Moxley.
So I just wanted to say two things. One, so this is a pressure testing comment. You talked about ranking. And I suspect, although I don't know, in HYA being the professionals, experts that we've hired, they may come, and don't be surprised if they tell you they don't want you to rank. And let me tell you why. You in your mind are going to know, here's my top 5. They may not want you to identify the top 5 in a ranked order. Because technically, when you come to the interview process, if you choose to interview 5 people, for example, when that day starts, the morning of the 14th, all 5 should come to the table on equal footing
Yep.
to have the same consideration of their interview. But if you publicly, because you have to do it publicly, in part of this meeting on November 6th, you've said, well, this was my first, and I put more weight here, or, which is normally what we would normally do in other circumstances. I think this is a little different. At the end of the day, you will then narrow down and say for final interviews, we want to bring back these 2 or these 3. Again, they may caution you from not ranking there either, because who you might think is your first may end up not being your first, and you do that self-fulfilling prophecy kind of thing. So I just caution you in this situation. Wouldn't do that in every situation, but that's
Okay,
just something to
thank
think
you.
about. The second thing is that I will, before I leave today, I will make sure that I can get in touch with them. We just have kind of not had the same schedules, but to get whatever their ranking tool is. We can certainly create one, but come next Friday, when you get either the electronic, because as Florida Sunshine, you're going to get, let's say there's 40, you're going to get 40. But when you go down through it at the end of the day, there is a certain percentage of them that are the delivery person or someone that doesn't even begin to have the credentials, but they've just clicked on everything. Those, you don't spend time with those. Those get set over here. You've looked at them, they don't meet the criteria, but then you've narrowed down your scope. And let's say you have this set of 10. That's when you're really honing in and you do here are the characteristics and those kinds of things. That's just my thinking. I believe, Mrs. Justice, you are correct. They will come having done all that background check, preliminary background checks, whatever, without going that deep check, but the preliminary, and they will come, and in their expert opinion, they'll say, here are the top 10 that we have, and we've vetted, we've done reference checks, we've done all those things that we've done, and they'll come, but they don't want to limit you from saying, because it's ultimately your decision, and Mrs. Rosari, you're right on the money. So if they come with 8 people, the list that ends up may have 3 that's on their list, but you may have said, no, if we're going to agree to 5 candidates on that, or 6, then here they are. It's your consensus list. Some will be on their list, some may not. At that point in time, and you go from there. But the one thing I do want to have, before we leave the last question, is I did kind of hear consensus on one-on-ones,
Yes.
because I'll start to kind of put a schedule together.
Yeah, I mean, I
of
learned
what
as
that
much
looks like,
one-on-one
so,
as I
okay.
do from
Okay.
watching the interaction that,
I would encourage you to do
sure.
that.
So
I'm
that would be on
100% yes on that.
Friday, correct?
I think that would be on Friday if I'm really, because if you remember, if you think about it, an average of an hour interview on the first, that 14th, I mean, if you interview 5 people, that's 5 hours right there. You would not want to do one-on-ones the rest of that day, so I think those would be on
On that
Friday.
Friday, I would like, from my point of view, I would like, if we have the 3 finalists, in between the times that we're interviewing one-on-one, I would like to have our assistant superintendent take in the candidates around our district and just showing them.
Can I add that, yes, it's around the district, but I think it would be appropriate, I'm not sure if I'm going to say this right, but if at that point we've identified our top candidates, which we will have done after that first day, we'll have our top candidates who we're bringing back on that Saturday. That on that Friday, they meet with some key people in the district. I mean, I think it's appropriate they meet, can they do that? They meet with assistant superintendents.
Assistant superintendents, I agree with you on that.
How are you gonna get their feedback? For what purpose? I'm not saying no, I'm just
Right.
asking for what purpose?
What I'm thinking about, and the process, and Dr. Moxley pointed this out really well. I'm used to ranking, but you're exactly right. I forgot. I haven't done this in the sunshine, in front of cameras before. I don't know if or how we can, you're right, if or how we can get that feedback. But I think it's somehow, like, I would like to know how those people interact with key leaders in the district. I would like to know how, let's say, for example, an assistant superintendent, took them to 3 schools. How did that go? What did you pick up? Like, what did you hear? I don't know how we can do that
Because
process.
what if they'd have to share it publicly, or they'd have to share it all one-on-one, and then they can't share publicly, I got a bad vibe when we were at this school and they interacted with this person, because if we end up hiring that person, then they've publicly said that, it just
Yeah.
opens up a can of worms.
It's putting them in a bad situation. I was just thinking.
On the
Go ahead.
flip side of that, though, as a candidate, meeting with
Yeah, I want to know who
The-
I'm working with.
as a candidate, meeting with the leadership or the cabinet members in this case, if that were the case, the candidate might in fact say, this really isn't the place for me.
Good
And
point.
by the next day, we're getting a withdrawal, who knows? And that brings us down to, instead of 3, we have 2 candidates. On the flip side, we may not get feedback, but it gives the candidate feedback.
Good point.
So though we might want to know what our cabinet members are thinking, maybe in the reverse, maybe we don't worry about what our cabinets are thinking in terms of what they're receiving, because we're doing the one-on-ones. However, it gives the candidate enough information to say, this is exactly where I want to be.
Would it be
This is exactly
Okay.
where, what my goal is, I want to be in this district because I want to work with, with this cabinet.
I think we're selling ourselves as much as they're selling
think you're
themselves.
right.
Exactly.
And I think that, I think we're putting our employees in a
Yeah.
very difficult position if we're asking them to give us some feedback. So I don't think we should do that. But I do think they should help us sell our district.
So what about doing like on
Tours could
Friday,
do
doing
that. The
a
tours
lunch
could be
with
the opportunity.
final candidates and your cabinet?
Can you, I missed some of that.
They're gonna see each other, they're gonna be, the final candidates are all gonna be around each other, and what about doing a
Right,
lunch
right.
with your cabinet?
Yes, and I actually went, you try not to reinvent the wheel, but I went to Volusia County to see what they were doing, with their structure. And, they're doing the tours, so they have so they meet, and whoever the host is, whoever their staff is, I don't know. Ours would be an assistant superintendent. They have a designated time, an hour and a half, whatever, for the tour. And then they did have a lunch built in. They did a reception. Now, they did a different thing where they eliminated a round. They just went right to so they're only doing a 1-tiered interview process. They are not doing a 2-day interview process. So they have, on that day where they're all interviewed, they have the tour throughout the day. They have the interviews with the board. They have one-on-ones on the second day. And then between the first and the second day, they have a reception or something.
So I would imagine one of our strategic partners may be willing to sponsor a lunch, and not one of the strategic educational partners, but
Right.
perhaps one of the ones that we use for the bank, the credit union or something like that, that's a little bit more,
Right.
so it's not just like Ed Foundation or Learning Alliance sponsoring,
Right.
but they might sponsor a reception or something where you could have district leadership, and I don't know if you'd invite board members or not, but you could have some type of a luncheon where at least they could get a feel for the environment.
Yeah.
And then if it's enough people, they can split off a little bit and ask some questions if they want to.
It's just a meet, it's.
That's
a-
meet and greet.
Is that appropriate for us to be at?
I don't know, I'm asking.
Yeah.
So I don't mean to interrupt, I don't want, keep going. I just have an appointment,
have to
so
go
I'm
too.
going to just step out.
Okay.
I have to go
Thank
too.
you.
I mean,
Sorry.
we said 12:30.
Okay. So, all right, well,
Can-
we need to continue this conversation because we really need to hammer out some details. But let's see where it goes after the conversation with Hazard Young to see.
With their tool.
With their tools and
Okay.
what their plan is for those days. And then after we have that, maybe we can
Do
reschedule
you
to come
all
back together.
need another meeting like this before the 6th?
I'd like to see the tool, I think with the
Yeah.
tools, yeah.
So let's gather all that information and we'll
Okay.
put something
So
together.
you can make a decision.
Well, thank you all, because I felt like we needed to kind of vet this information
That was a
first.
good idea, Terry.
I just know that we like to talk and we like to
No, you're right.
kind of air it out. And I think it's important that we do that before we have them here with that huge
Right.
packed
Can I
schedule.
also just throw out that if we're going to do this next week,
It won't,
It can't be
it
on
won't be,
Halloween.
wait, when's the
Very
first?
busy on Halloween.
The 1st is Friday.
Friday.
oh, Friday's
So
okay, actually.
there's because I've been concerned about the layout and organization, Dr. Moxley has set up an appointment for me to talk through it with them, and that's on the 1st.
Talk through it
Actually,
with
yours is on the
HYA?
4th.
Oh, mine's on the
I
4th?
have a conference
Okay.
call with them on the 1st.
Okay.
But we can do it on the 1st, that's not a problem. I just, for me, wanting to make sure that structurally I could get logistics down pat. I didn't want to walk in
Right.
here like we did I didn't all want
The
to
last
repeat.
meeting.
So I was doing a conversation ahead of time. So on Friday, the 1st, I have a 9 o'clock with them to talk about the agenda, so I could help guide Nancy to get the agenda right for the 6th. And then we set something up with the chair so that she could understand the flow of the meeting, and it was just structural. I guess my question to you is, you're gonna get all the applicants and all the resumes on the morning of the 1st. Then you have the weekend and Monday and Tuesday before you come in here Wednesday to do the picking, putting your slate together, because that's the first thing. Do you need another meeting next week?
Can we meet after you talk to HYA to go over the evaluation tools, and then you can share
Yeah,
the
so
information that you have?
it would be what day next week would you want?
Friday after your call with them.
Okay.
Friday, yeah, late
Okay.
morning,
I
early
mean,
afternoon,
how long do you
whenever.
anticipate that call being?
I have it set up for an hour,
All right,
and
so
they
you
haven't gone
say-
over an
you
hour.
say 9 o'clock, you're talking to them, or 9:30?
I'm talking to them at 9 o'clock.
Okay, so let's say 10:30, or 11 for this meeting?
That's fine with me.
For an hour?
I'm-
I mean, an hour.
They'll have to email.
What's the date?
She'll have to contact them ahead of
first.
time.
I'll have
Let
to
them
She's
look.
know.
gonna
I don't have my
contact, she's gonna
schedule
get the
with me.
evaluation
Yeah.
tool. That's
Today.
gonna come to us on Monday, at the beginning of next week, so we'd have next week to go over it. And then on Friday, we would have looked over
Oh,
the
shoot.
evaluation tool. Dr. Moxley would have had, God bless you, a conversation. God bless you. We'll have had a conversation with Hazard Young, and then we'll talk, and then that'll give you a good opportunity the following week to talk to them about and give them some feedback from what we had discussed as a board that Friday.
I know you had some concerns about us airing this out in the public and
No, it
candidates
wasn't
looking at it.
anywhere, this conversation didn't go anywhere the way I thought it
Okay.
could have went.
But I think kudos to those people that do the research. That's who I want. I want somebody that's going to take the time to watch these painful meetings and know what we want, and not just play to what we want, but understand, because you can't, you're who you are. You can't change that. But I also think it's important to know kind of what the board is discussing.
November 1st at 10:30, workable
with
for
me.
everybody?
I don't know yet. I don't have my schedule in front of me.
The,
Yeah.
Okay, as soon as I get back to my office.
It's okay for you?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
The portal for applications closes today, is that right?
At midnight tonight.
At midnight tonight. So they're going to take a week to sift through, is that?
So my understanding, it'll close tonight at midnight, and then, of course, they, the weekend's there. So on Monday, they'll start, and they'll gather everything up, they'll go through, is everything there that needs to be there? And then they'll bundle those and send them to Nancy, and Nancy's been in communication with them. And they're going to number them, just like you had before, so there'll be a name, but it'll be number 1, number 2, number 3.
So we're
For
going to.
ease and reference.
Sorry for interrupting.
Oh, you did.
We're going to start getting that information early next week, is that right?
You're going to get it probably mid to the end. I think you're going to get it the morning of the 1st.
But anyone who's submitting their application today, HYI knows who they are. I mean, they may not have
Would
pressed
think so,
submit, but
yeah.
HYI has spoken with them. They would know who they are.
I
They
will,
would-
I will see, I'm sorry.
No,
I will see if we can get it earlier. I mean, my request to them was that she got it on sometime Thursday afternoon, so she could make whatever copies, whoever wanted print. You're all gonna get it electronically, but some may want a print of something.
But there are
I
some
guess my
things they're gonna do.
concern, for me, my concern is, not including the weekend, that leaves us 2 days until we meet with them, to put all our information together. I'm not available all of those 2 days. That's a push,
Okay.
because I have other commitments. The sooner I can get that information, the more helpful it
Yeah,
is
I
to me
agree.
to be able
I
to do
agree.
that thoroughly and responsibly.
If for some reason we can get the download of all of that by Wednesday, I don't know. I don't know what they do
Well,
to
because there is some
get it
work
ready
they're
to-
gonna do
Yeah,
between
there
the
is.
end of the close of there are some
We
things
could
they've
get
probably
the
waited to do.
printed copy by Thursday.
If you
Intentionally.
could get it Wednesday or Thursday, do you still want to leave the meeting on Friday?
Yeah, it has nothing to do with the
Okay,
resumes
okay,
to me.
thank you, thank you.
Right?
Okay, then we'll
No,
publish
it doesn't
a
have anything to do
10:30
with that.
meeting. on
Yeah, I
Friday.
mean, I want to have enough time to look through, to do my own
Okay.
vetting, and
Yeah.
Monday and
Got
Tuesday is
Saturday
just
and
I'm
Sunday.
not,
All right.
Just don't
good.
sleep.
right, already, that's
Oh,
getting
sorry.
problematic.
We're going to call this meeting to order at 12:35. Thank you.
Thank you.
Call it to order.